Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Sunday night Reef Dork live stream, aka the Prestige Reef Dork Show, where today I'm joined, as always, by Ryan from prestigereef.co.uk, which is the #1 coral selling website in the country and the #2 YouTube channel in the country.
I knew that you'd get it in within like the first 30 seconds.
I had to, otherwise you'd beat me to it.
Well, that is true. Those people that don't know, Alex took over me this week on his subscribe account. And what was the first thing that happened when you took over?
You called me.
I called you immediately, didn't I, to congratulate you?
Yeah, straight away, yeah.
Because I know it means a lot to you. It means a little bit less to me. I've been doing it a lot longer. But you want to be the #1 person, don't you? So anyone who's not subscribed, go subscribe to him now.
Exactly. No, so I've said this a few times before. There's no competition between you and me. I don't care about being above it or below you. That doesn't bother me. Being #1 in the UK I'm quite proud of that. That feels like an achievement, which I'm sure you were as well. And I want to be #2 in the world. I'm never going to catch BRS, and I don't consider coralfish 12G to be in our niche because he's too good, basically.
The rules are changing because you're like, oh no, he's a bit too big, so let's just cut him out.
Yeah. So I'll just discount him. But I want to be #2. But anyway, there we go. That's that. However, tonight
we didn't get like a congratulation, like a cheering for you. That's what you normally do, isn't it?
Yeah. Let me see if I've got going to the brand section of this. Have I got any? I've got a laugh.
Oh, you laughing at me because I'm now #2? That'll do.
Maybe, yeah. I don't know. I didn't really think of that. And the only thing I've got there lined up is.
Yeah. Neither of them really work, do they?
I didn't think about that, but anyway, right. So the live stream tonight, then, what are we going to be talking about? I'm just having a look at the chat. Basically, so there's two parts to this live stream. One is answering the internet's most frequently asked questions on saltwater aquariums. Me and Ryan are going to just go through answers to some of the most common ones. But two, and to be completely honest, this is really last few weeks we've not really engaged with the chat as much as we like to. And I've missed just so many. When I watch it back, I'm like, I wish I'd have been able to answer that. So I want to talk to you guys a bit more. So ask any questions you've wanted to ask or that I haven't answered from before in the chat. And Ryan and I will get to them when we can.
I think it's probably wise so that we definitely see the questions. Because obviously there's lots and lots of comments, isn't there? The best thing to do is put something at the beginning, whether you put Alex in capitals or Ryan in capitals, and then your question, because then we can easily see who is asking, if you see what I mean. Rather, because at the moment you can see Les has written shots fired, woo, hip hip hooray. If there's a question in there, it's harder for us to see it, if you see what I mean.
Okay, in that case, put question. The trouble is everyone's going to say it, but put question in block caps at the start of your comment in the chat, and then we'll answer it. So before to that, we're going to go to what's it called? Oh, that's a point actually. Isn't there an ask the audience thing? There is. I might have a crack at that, but anyway,
we tried that once before, didn't we? We didn't like it.
But I think actually I think I understand it now. It separates the questions out. But anyway, doesn't matter. I may or may not do that. First things first, member questions. And then we'll do the most frequently asked questions. So member questions. There are a few here. And I'm going to BN3 reefing. You've asked 2. I'm not going to answer 1 because that's one of the most frequently asked questions. But I'll tell you when we get to that one. But the other one is he's got a mandarin, 6 months old, looking good, feeding well. Is this a good sign for the future? Ryan, have you got the crystal ball this week, or is it?
Yeah, you never know with mandarins. Mandarins can do really well for a long period of time, and then not. It all comes down to, are they eating prepared food?
Yeah. Even then, I had the thing is, 6 months in is great. That is really good news, and of course that's a good start. But it doesn't mean that it's going to be alive in 5 years' time. And I had a pair of, they were dragonets. What were they called? The flame scarlet ones, whatever they're called. And they were absolutely fine for about 18 months. Then one died and the other died a couple of months later. So I presume they'd hoovered up all the pods, maybe. I don't know. I don't know what it was, but actually the female was egg bound, so that's why she died. But I don't know why the male died soon after. But yeah,
I have them in all the tanks in the coral farm. one scooter plane, or sometimes two in every single tank, and they eat pellets. If the pellets are down there long enough, they'll eat them. Yeah.
Okay.
I was surprised when I first started noticing it.
Well, they
But
go
when they're in
soft
that
as
little-
well, don't they? So they
Yeah.
can a bit more edible.
When they're in that little, you remember, I keep things in a little trap first, don't I? When they're
Yeah.
in the trap, if you put the pellets in there, eventually they're like, what's that? I'll give that a go.
Okay. Fair enough. But there you go. I mean, but 6 months is great, but it doesn't mean that another 6 months it'll be fine. And I still think 6 months is relatively early with that. So I've got a regal angelfish I've had for getting on for 6 months now. He's not touched any corals yet, but I'm not busting out the champagne because that's early days.
Well, speaking of angels which touch corals, as obviously I didn't put a video out this week, but you know already, the angelfish for the angelfish reef tank definitely does eat coral because it's claimed its first victim.
But there's good news, isn't there?
What's the good news?
It's a crappy soft coral.
Oh yeah, so and look, to be fair, it was a finger coral and it hasn't eaten it. It's just annoyed it, so that it stayed closed for about a week. It has opened again, and it seems to have gone off it for some reason. So I'm not sure if for sure.
But sometimes they just have a nibble. I bought 3 pyramid butterflies once.
Yeah.
I put them in the tank and instantly one of them went for an aiptasia. And I was like, yes, I didn't realize that. And then that was the last time he touched it.
It didn't like taste.
No, he was like, oh, that's disgusting. I'm not eating that. I'm going for some shrimp.
So all he did was annoy the aiptasia so that it spread everywhere else.
Yeah.
and then leave him.
Exactly. But so you never know. But yeah, but fingers crossed. And so the tank, he's not gone in the tank yet because the tank is just air and rock. So
oh yeah, he's not. Yeah, it's not. I have done the aquascape though. I've finished it. I've glued it, and I am pretty much ready to fill it with water other than one connection. So, but yeah.
Okay, fair enough. So that's the first question. Next one is from Peter Callis 82. Oh yeah, that's a good topic for a video. What tangs can be kept together in a 300-litre tank? Will my coral beauty kill or vice versa? Or what wrasses? There's 1,000 questions here.
He's one of your members, so I'll let you tackle these ones.
Well, we're going to go. So what tangs can be kept in a 300-litre tank? It's quite small.
It is a small tank. I would say so. The tanks which usually come in like the smallest are some of like the Zebrasoma tanks, and they stay relatively small. Like I haven't finished the sentence yet. Some of them get to dinner plate sized.
Correct.
But like I've had a purple tang which has stayed relatively small for, as I said, for a long time, and you could put her in a 300-litre tank, and she's never grown any bigger.
Okay.
I don't know why she's never grown any bigger because she was in a 1,000-litre tank. And my sailfin tang went from being like this, like one of the really, really tiny, almost see-through ones, to being like this. But she never grew.
It's because sometimes people will say this particular tang, whatever, foxface, grows really quickly.
Yeah.
But I don't think, I'm sure there are sometimes when that is the case, but I think often it'll be that particular specimen. So you could buy another sailfin tang that wouldn't grow that quickly.
Yeah.
And I can't explain it, but there are sometimes that a certain fish will just be like, yeah, I'm going to go for a growing spurt. So a 300-litre tank, that's basically a Red Sea 300 XL.
I would stick with the small Zebrasomas, and eventually you'll have to move them on if they get too big. But
I would be tempted to go for a Tomini tang as well.
I knew you were going to say that, yeah.
Yeah, because so I've got one in my 150-litre to my left. Yeah. He's been in there for a year.
Nino, what's that? What's that?
I know, he's still tiny and he's fine. And he's in there with a foxfish, which will rabbitfish, which will also get too big at some point. Yeah. But they're easy to catch. So so if you really want to, maybe those two, but you're gonna have to move them on, especially the Zebrasoma long term. And you asked if they would kill the coral beauty. The coral beauty won't attack the tangs, I wouldn't have thought, but vice versa, maybe, probably not. But they can be aggressive, I think.
Unlikely. They're very different. They're different colors, different species. They eat different things. They occupy different niches in the wild, and they're even in different territories in the tank. So coral beauties are normally sort of in and amongst the rockwork, whereas the tangs are swimming around. So it's very low risk as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, it's probably,
but not 100% because they're live animals. Anything can happen.
Yeah, fish don't read books.
No,
fish don't watch live streams.
No,
which is annoying because I'm trying to get the subscriber count up. So
that's true. Yeah.
And you also ask,
you keep rubbing that in all night, aren't you?
no, yeah. It's actually that should at some point that'll go up to 800 as well at some point tonight, I think. Anyway, all right. So, and will wrasses eat your crabs? Probably not. If you have the little anemone crabs, if you have very small crabs, yeah, they will do if they're the big halicoris wrasses. But
I'll say, what wrasse are you thinking of? Because you can get like, no, oh, is that what they asked?
So it was. He just said what wrasses and how.
Some wrasse will definitely eat your crabs.
Like what?
Things,
right.
Like you know the big ones, like dragon wrasse and things like that.
Wrasse. Yeah. Okay. It's just the trouble is that there's 1,000 parts to that question. Yeah. I think that's probably as much as we could do there, but a bit of research there, I would say. Bubbly reef. After going fallow to battle ick, I now have high nitrates of 44, fish only for now. I've tried lowering food input and big water change, but nothing. So I think she's asking how to get nitrates down, basically. I'd do more water changes. It will work. If you've got good quality source water, it will work.
Yeah.
Or, if you haven't got a skimmer, put a skimmer in.
Yeah, how big is the tank? Does it have a sump? There's all these questions that, because if you have, I'll be honest, I got distracted, so I didn't hear the start of the question. But if you have a sump and a skimmer, you can use Nopox, and that works brilliantly for nitrate.
That's true.
So
loads of options to lower nitrate.
I think my nitrate is like, that's the thing I struggle to get up more than anything else. I have to dose it for the coral farm. So if I could have some of your water, you could send it to me. That would be ideal.
If you ever want phosphate, give me a shout.
No, not your water. I want the person's water.
Bubbly reef, yeah. Tom also asks, how possible is it to keep a spotted? Oh yeah, I like this question. A spotted mandarin and a blue, red, green mandarin together, so as a pair. So can you keep two different types of dragonets together?
Yes, I've done it myself. Yeah, I've done it myself. I think they were different genders, so I don't know if you put two males together if they'll fight. But mandarins are absolute bastards.
They're horrible, aren't
they? They're like vicious.
You've had one bite your clownfish.
That's what I'm saying. There's a video somewhere. I don't even know where I could find it now. It's on one of my old videos of the entire tail of the clownfish. So clownfish tails are like that. The entire thing was in its mouth. Oh no, it wasn't its tail. No, it was just its fin. It was the entire side fin. Yeah, that's what it was. Yeah. So you just couldn't see the fin at all. And I had to separate them in the end. And it just, other than that, it wouldn't have let go.
Yeah. They can be aggressive. I personally wouldn't risk that because if they were totally different, you might be all right. But I would, if you put two males in together, like you say, that they're aggressive, super aggressive to each other. Yeah. So I personally wouldn't risk that, and I've never seen it. Doesn't mean it can't be done, but I wouldn't risk that. But you think it's all right?
I'm right here. I'm telling you right now. Also, I think Jamie's reef has two of them as well, but he has a massive tank, so it's a bit different. But no, I know I had it was a male red mandarin, and the green spotted one was the female. You can tell by the dorsal fins.
Okay, so the male female, I thought I'd be more okay with that. There's no way I'd put two males.
Definitely not two males, and possibly two females. I don't think they change gender. I'm pretty sure they don't.
No, you can sex them quite easily as well.
Yeah.
So just look up pictures. Mius, I think, says, I've got a question about ICP testing. It seems that almost every brand is offering ICPs now. Are there any differences in quality because prices differ? What's your experience with them? Almost certainly yes, but how do you know if one's accurate and the other isn't?
It's the same as with most things. Some people will tell you that one salt is the best salt. Some people will tell you another salt is the best salt, but you can have success with all different salts. Someone asked, I saw one of the comments a minute ago, asked what salt I use. I use Tropic Marin Pro. I've used it the whole time for the coral farm. I'm just getting that question out of the way.
Me too.
Because I promise I'd answer people, so that's a good time to mention it. I've used it from the beginning and I like it. It's but going back to the question, I like Reef Zelements ICP.
Oh, really?
I like it because they test the RO water for you at the same time, and they tell you if there's silicates and phosphate and stuff like that in it.
There are at least 3 I know of that test RO.
Well, okay. Well, I think I've only done 2. I've done a Triton.
Triton. Yeah.
Triton,
They
yeah.
don't.
Yeah, I've done a Triton one, and I've done Reef Settlements, and also I think Reef Settlements is cheaper than most of them. I think.
Okay. But is there a difference in quality? That supposedly the spectrometer machine that you have to use to do this is extremely difficult to use. And if you want someone who knows what they're doing, you've got to pay them a lot of money because they're valuable, because proper companies that don't piss around with fish tanks want them.
Yeah.
So and because Polo Reef, my mate, he bought one.
He's not your mate anymore after you like shamed his tank last week.
I didn't shame his tank. I just said I don't like big tanks. Anyway, but he bought one and then realised it's not like a Hannah checker. So you just it's pointless in the wrong hand.
They have to be calibrated as well, or
exactly,
like all the time.
Regularly. Yeah. So is there a difference in quality? Probably. Some are probably more accurate than others. Have you got any way of knowing? No. So just
have you got any way of knowing any of them are accurate?
Exactly.
I found what is interesting is I'm not going to tell you the companies or anything. Yeah. I spoke to one of the biggest companies in the industry, and they were talking to me about testing, and they said that some of the ICP tests that they're claiming to be able to do, there's not even technology which can test that low of that specific element. So how they're getting those readings, they don't know. That was a long time. Well, it was probably, I don't know, 4 years ago I had that conversation. And since, because everyone thinks that ICP tests are like, they're as accurate, they're spot on, nothing's wrong with them. But I don't think that is the truth. They're
not accurate. There are some things, and I couldn't tell you, I'd have to look it up. There are some things they're actually not very good at. So like alkalinity or calcium, just ignore it because they're like within 50%. Or I can't remember what it is, but there are some things that are just very not good at. But ICP tests, I always used ATI in the past.
Yeah.
And then I tried Triton. I just didn't like the way they set out the data. But it was fine. It was in the UK, so it was quite quick because ATI was in Germany. I now use Reef Factory because they send the data in an app, and I like the way it's set out. Is it any more accurate than or precise than ATI, or is it less?
So basically, the answer to your question is we're the wrong people to ask because we don't know.
Is there even a right person to ask? Because even if you ask a chemist who knows all this stuff, that chemist is not going to know what the practice is of Reef Factory, Triton, ATI, Aquaforest. So, but I think I don't see them as gospel. So I don't know about you, but when I do an ICP test, I don't go down it and go, I need 0.5 milliliter of lithium and add in a pinch of each. I tend to just think, is there anything horrendous in there, like metals or whatever, at a really high level? No, cool. Is my iodine or manganese low? Yeah, all right, I'll add a bit of that. That's it. I don't mess around with all of it personally. There are people who do. I'm not saying that's wrong. I personally think that's overcomplicating it, and that's just my style. That's the way I don't like. That doesn't speak to me as a method. Some people it does.
I don't like messing around with things which I can't test for very easily. So if they said to me, add 10 mil of manganese, for example, I won't add all 10 mil just in case, for whatever reason, the calculation's wrong or something. Because the next time I'm going to do an ICP test probably won't be for 2 months, so I won't actually know if it worked or not.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the other thing, is that you should do them quite regularly, but that's expensive. And it's as much as even though like I could suck up the cost, because at the end of the day, this is how expensive I'll be. So of doing one a month, for example, but it's a faff. I can't be bothered with it.
I know what you mean. Plus, it's also because you usually get the results back a couple of days later. How out of date are your results? And have you done a water change since then, which have added some of the elements back and all things like that?
Yeah. True. It's just I think it's overcomplicating. I think if you're starting to look at ICP tests, if you've nailed the other 99% of the hobby, wicked. But you probably haven't. I haven't.
We can tell.
Yeah, I know. So go for the basics. So that doesn't really answer your question.
No.
That's the answer we have for you. And
they're probably more confused now than before.
But that's still the right answer as far as I can say.
Yeah, true.
And the last one is from Gouldy39, fellow Waterbox man. Oh, we've both got Waterbox. I just realised that.
Oh yeah.
I'm almost ready to start my water box 180.5, and I was planning on going bare bottom. Oh, saucy. I would like to eventually be able to keep a blue mandarin.
Grow up.
No, I don't want to. Thank you very much. Blue mandarin, but I'm not sure if the tank will be able to support enough copepods to keep a captive bred example alive. For example, this would be a couple of years down the road. Yeah, absolutely fine. I don't think you need sand necessarily. A refugium is always good because that's a breeding ground for copepods and amphipods. I don't have a refugium. No, I don't anymore. I took it offline a while ago, and I still have. Anytime I take my algae magnet off the side, it's a Tunsy one, so it doesn't float. Anytime I take my algae magnet off, and it goes like that. My copper band and my hawkfish come over, and they're looking for pods, and I can see them, and they hoover them up. So yeah, big old tank, loads of live rock. When it's established, you put in a load of corals, especially if you've got a refugium.
And even better, you can get tank bred mandarins these days, which
that's what you're talking about. Yeah.
Oh, I missed that bit. That are readily. They're reasonably readily available. If you ask your shop, you can usually get them. And they take live, not live food, frozen food or pellets.
Yeah.
I remember when they first came out, I saw them at Macna, and they were like they were like insignificantly small. I was like, you can barely even see these. I've never seen anything so small.
I saw a few. They're tiny. I saw a few at Abyss when I went up there to do the Yerpel tank.
Yeah.
And I wonder if I don't know if I did. I can't find it. I've got too many fish videos. But they're actually cute. They had bulbous eyes, and they were really cool. I still wouldn't be 100% sure. It's not like if you buy a captive bred mandarin, that's it, it's fine, don't worry about it, it'll eat anything. Because like sometimes I've got a couple of pipefish, they're the little blue striped pipefish, they're tiny, absolutely tiny. And I've seen one like trying to deep throat a piece of mysis, and they're like, like gagging on it. I know. And it's like are you okay, mate? Do you want to? There's a smaller bit just over there. Do you want to have that instead? So I wonder about them. And it's the same. I've seen the same thing with mandarins before, with dragonets. What are you smirking at?
No, I'm just laughing at what you said about that. A piece of mysis.
It does, though. It's the best way to describe it. Absolutely. That's a good sized tank. You'll have a load of live rock, load of corals. And the other thing, so whenever I lift up a frag plug, because I've got those aquascapes where they've got frag plug holes. Yeah. Whenever I lift up a frag plug, there's normally a bristleworm under there. But there's always an amphipod and half a dozen copepods. Yeah. And I'm trying to train my copper band to come over when I do it.
And eat,
so they hide all over the place. You'll have loads without even knowing most of the time.
Just very quickly, because did I tell you about that angelfish tried to eat a bristleworm?
Yeah, you did.
Yeah.
Dumbass.
So you get I'll fill people in. So that angelfish is not cheap. They're quite expensive. And already that puts you on edge where you can't sleep at night. And in the morning I came down, and this fish, I kid you not, was covered. Its face, it's fine now, in the spikes of a bristleworm. Now, I've never seen a fish covered in the spikes of a bristleworm before, but because it's the most expensive one I've ever owned, that's the one that I decided to try and eat one, and appears to have lost the battle.
Yeah, I had a goby do that before, and this is not your. Oh, hang on a second. Share screen, entire screen. Bish. This is not your king eye, but this is from the Ocean Project. Yeah. This was their one. I think they've still got this. Anyway, I had a goby once who got a mouth covered in bristles. Felt really bad for it. But yeah, they don't make that mistake twice.
No, but let's hope not, because I'm not sure I can take it. I'm not sure I can take the stress.
Yeah. But there we go. But yeah, fish can be stupid sometimes. All right. So that is member questions done. Next up, then we're on to the internet's most frequently asked questions. And I'm not going to do loads of these because a lot of them are quite similar, but there were some, and some are I don't think there's much value in answering some, but I did pull out a few that I thought there was a bit of value in answering. And so this is literally, I Googled what saltwater fish and then got all of these. And there was another question I Googled as well, which I'll look up in a sec. But the first one, what saltwater fish can live together? I was surprised that was a question that gets asked.
I mean, that is a very broad question.
That's a freshwater aquarist's question, because like in freshwater, whenever you Google a fish in freshwater, you always ask, is it a community fish?
Yeah.
And really you don't kind of have, you do have the same considerations with saltwater, and we've just been talking about will a tang be aggressive, for example, but it's not the same thing. And it's I don't know why, it just seems to be, it's more of an issue in freshwater. But what sort of water fish can live together?
Loads of this.
Give me a list of the 500 fish that are available, and then we'll cross-reference them, and we'll be here for 7 hours. And
well, if you think about it, think about how many different tank combinations you can get with all the different variety of fish. Because although a lot of tanks are similar, they're also, a lot of them are very no one's identical, if you see what I mean.
I bet that nobody else in the world has the same fish in their tank as I do.
They might have the same fish. They might not have the same
exact
coral and everything.
No. The same exact fish. I've got 16 fish. No one will have those exact 16 fish
in the whole world.
In the whole world. And the reason I'm saying that, and I've not run the maths, and if you're a mathematician, let me know. But for example, if you shuffle a deck of cards, the chances are mathematically nobody will have ever had those deck of cards in the same order.
I suppose if you think about it, it's the same as like the lottery numbers. It's like, is it 7 numbers or 8 numbers? Well, you've got 16 numbers essentially.
That's the thing. And like this, and just the odds are just astronomical. So I think that's no one will ever have that. But anyway,
I've got about 70 fish, I think. So definitely no one has the same combination other than maybe your mate.
Yeah, exactly. But so what sort of fish can live together? It's most fish will get on fine. But because a reef is such a competitive environment, it's not like. Do you know what? I had a phone call at work the other day, with someone like an external party, like a video call, and they had a fish tank behind them, and they had two. One was like arowanas and all that, and one was right behind him, and it had a blue glow.
Oh
and
yeah.
I was like, oh, if that's a saltwater tank, he might recognize me. I was like, please don't. I don't.
Was it a saltwater tank?
I don't think so, but I couldn't really see. I couldn't see. There was like half a dozen people anyway.
Okay.
But I was watching all the freshwater fish swimming around. Obviously, paying attention to work at the same time. But they were all just kind of just moseying around, not really doing anything. And I forgot where I was going with this now. I had a point.
Well, that was a well worthwhile conversation from the UK's #1 subscriber count person.
I've literally forgotten what I was saying. So
there is a big difference between freshwater and saltwater fish. I think that I might get a lot of pissed off people now. Saltwater fish act more naturally than freshwater fish. They're like darting in and out of the rocks, and they're like, whereas I find freshwater fish are like zombie fish in comparison to marine fish.
Which is the exact point I was going to make, because they were just going back and forwards. Life is easy. There's no stress. There's no flows. They don't have to contend with that.
Yeah.
Whereas a reef environment, and this is the point I was going to make, is a competitive environment where every inch of space matters. And there's probably, if you go into a coral in the wild, in a space that big, there's probably 20 crabs, a ton of shrimp, 50 fish, all this sort of stuff.
So what you just said, basically, you heard it here first. The UK's #1 reefing channel said all freshwater tanks are shit. Is that what you said?
I don't recall saying those.
So
no, not at all.
You heard it from the second biggest channel then.
But the point is, the reef environment is an extremely competitive environment. So there are times when fish get very competitive and very territorial. Clownfish, for example, if you swim in the wild near a clownfish by his anemone, he'll come out and bite you. Which you'll know if you've ever put your hand in your tank and you've got breeding clownfish. So there are times when it gets like that, but actually a lot of the time, because of that environment, they all occupy different niches, so they don't need to be aggressive with each other. So most fish are actually not aggressive towards each other. It's only if you get conspecific. So if you put two of the same fish in a tank, they'll probably fight because they're like, hey, this is my niche. If I put two of the same gobies in, they'll be like, hey, you can get off my pistol shrimp, that's mine. You can stay out of my cave. Whereas you put a tang and a wrasse in, they're like, whatever.
And how they're introduced to the system also makes an incredible difference. If you've got an established purple tang and you add a yellow tang, the purple tang is going to try and kill the yellow tang. If you have put two a yellow and a purple in at the same time, you're more likely to have success. If you put them in next to each other but they can't touch each other and then release them, you're like, there's a very high chance they'll get on. So it all comes down to how they're introduced, I find, as well.
A lot of the time it does. So yeah, for sure. And the copper band is the example you always give with that.
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
It's because it's like the bullies, and then there's like the little nerdy kid with the long nose.
Yeah, exactly. All right, but what sort of water fish can live together? Most of the time, it's okay. If you put two of the same type in, you're probably asking for trouble.
Yeah.
If they're a mated pair, you're all right. Some fish will get on well, some won't. Even
you're going to get a comment now saying, as in tomorrow, saying, "I just bought a lionfish to be friends with my clownfish."
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but the clownfish is hiding. I don't know what's going on. Yeah. All right. So that was the first question. Then the second one was, what saltwater fish are in season right now? And this, I think, is another. There are some, and you do get this in the saltwater world, but there are some fish in the freshwater world as well, like killifish. I think they're seasonal, so they live for like 6 months or a year, not long at all.
Yeah,
and they're proper seasonal. But in the saltwater hobby, you get times when you will get certain fish in shops because, or you won't get certain fish in shops because the weather's terrible in Indonesia, for example, and the area they're collected is just a mess.
Yeah.
So what fish are in season throughout I've never noticed. I know that's the thing, but I've never noticed that, like, you don't get foxface in October, for example.
There's definitely a specific time of year where you get tiny, like the 2p sized regal tangs.
Yeah.
You don't get them all year round, but all of a sudden you'll see a ton of them in a shop where there's like 20 of them in the same tank.
Yeah.
I've seen that. That's definitely a seasonal thing.
And that's not just one. You go to the next shop, same story.
Yeah.
Next shop,
Yeah.
same story.
Yeah. But the other thing that people need to remember, you only get imports at certain times. Fish are a bit different, but especially with corals. So if I wanted to import a box of corals tomorrow, I can't do that. I can the next import of coral I can do is in like 2 weeks' time. So it's the same sort of thing. You can't just they're living things which have to be caught. So you can't just get them all the time whenever. So if something which hides, for example, like relatively easy, is not easy to catch, that's why you don't see them as often, because they're too good at hiding. It's the same as, so some angelfish are really deep, for example. So you don't see those angelfish that often. Well, peppermints is a perfect example. There's probably loads of them, but because you can't catch them, that you don't see them.
They're also in a really remote place as well. Yeah. But there are, I think, the De Jongi grammar as well. That's like a reversi Percy royal grammar. They live in they're rock dwellers. And I can't remember the specifics of it, but not only are they in an awkward place to get, they're difficult to get because as soon as they see a diver come in, they're like, "I'm getting in the rock, mate."
Yeah, you need to get one of those. You're obsessed with it. You mentioned that fish all the time.
Okay, I'd not even noticed that. They are cool, but they're too expensive for me.
Did you see Reef Builders did a thing for a new firefish I'd never seen before, like lavender firefish?
No,
you get like you get. I'm sure it was one, because I think there's 4 types now, unless I just looked at the picture. I didn't read the article.
Do you know what? I did see this, but I thought, those two look different, but I didn't read it.
Because you get that's the one on the left. So you get the red firefish, you get purple, you get the hillfricks or hillfricki. Hillfricki, pronounced differently. And then I've never seen that one before. I have seen a blue firefish as well, which I think if you go to the very bottom of the screen, I think there's one there. But I thought that was pretty cool.
That's a hellfreak. That's a hellfreaky, I think.
No. If you go up, sorry, I'm sure maybe it's in one of those. It's in one of those smaller pictures. Yeah.
So that I couldn't tell you which is which. Which is
the one on the right is the Hell Freaky. The one on the left is the new one.
No, Hell Freaky left.
No.
Yeah.
Really?
Newly elevated from synonym of N Hell Freaky brackets left. So that's the Hell.
I'm shocked.
That is what you know.
That does show what I know, because I'm shocked because I'm. Wait a minute. No. It's the opposite way round on my screen, I think.
Oh yes, we've had that before. That's hilarious.
Yeah. I was like, I can't have got that wrong.
relief on your face. Yeah, okay, but so I can't remember where that came from, but firefish. I don't really like firefish because they're too timid. Like I
Yeah,
bought
they
a hell
jump.
freaky.
Yeah.
Yeah, I bought a hell freaky. And it died after it just disappeared. I never saw it. To
Yeah.
be fair, it was in my big tank, which is it's not an aggressive tank by any means,
Yeah.
but it's not a peaceful, placid tank.
Yeah.
Like the fish look out for themselves, but it's not like you want proper docile. Like
Yeah.
they're just so nervy.
They're like a nano tank fish. Like you put them in a nano tank, they rarely leave the rock. It'd be good for the fish tank behind you.
Maybe, but I was going to say they jump, but I've got a lid on that to be fair.
Yeah.
So, but I don't want any more fish in there. I already have difficulties with nitrates as it is. So. All right, so there we go. And this was the BN3. Next question was BN3 reefing's question. Well, kind of anyway. What saltwater fish eat aiptasia?
Copper bands. Done.
So, well, we've established that pyramid butterfly will peck at them once and then never eat them again. But there's loads of fish that eat aiptasia actually.
Yeah.
It's just that you don't. The ones that you hear about are aiptasia eating filefish, which really should be called coral eating filefish.
Yeah.
There's the copper-banded butterfly, of course. Those are the big ones. But then there's like half a dozen other butterflies, raccoon butterflies.
There'll be loads, but the problem is they don't get mentioned because they'll also eat your coral at the same time.
Exactly. And it's not like so an aiptasia eating filefish will probably peck at some of your corals. Sometimes you might get lucky, but they probably will. A raccoon butterfly will definitely decimate everything, or maybe a raccoon is a bad example, but some of the ones that also eat them will just go for everything. And if they see something juicy and like squishy, they'll be like, I'm eating that.
Yeah.
I don't care.
The problem with cod bands, see, they're a pain. But and I know I said this before, but so some cod bands definitely eat coral. I have one which is an absolute nightmare when it comes to eating coral, but it eats aiptasia. So I allow it, I sort of forgive it that it will eat the occasional favia, or it started eating candy canes the other day. I'm like, why are you doing this to me? And then I have another copper band, which I will be selling soon, which is like a ferocious eater. It if I put a cube of mysis in, it'll eat the entire cube. I'm not even joking, but it will not eat aiptasia. So I'm like, you're useless to me. I'm not here for a pretty fish. I want something that does a job.
Like a high maintenance girlfriend.
Maybe.
But so there are loads, but really aiptasia is a bit of a pain in the backside. And I've just seen one in my water box the other day. I need to pull the frag plug out and scrape it off. But it's just a pain to get rid of, because even like in my main tank, you won't see any aiptasia in the display because there's a copper band there. You lift up the weir box cover, millions of them. You look in the sump and you'll see a couple. So as soon as eventually when that fish dies, hopefully in 10 years time, I'll suddenly start
more likely in 10 days time than 10 years.
More likely, yeah. Now I've said it. I'll start getting aiptasia back. So it's just that you can't ever get rid of it. You've got to manage it.
But yeah, people it's not something which is a big deal for people that have been in the hobby for a long time. Do you see what I mean? I think you did something that you said a video once. There's one of the ones I watched that said once you've things that experienced reefers don't care about anymore that new people do. And that was one of them. And I just thought that's so true, because once you've learned to manage it, there is I'm sorry, I didn't mute it then. There is a you can manage almost anything in our tanks with something else which will eat it. It might not be ideal. For example, you might get an aiptasia eating filefish, which will decimate your aiptasia and then all your zoas. But you've still got something which will deal with it, if you see what I mean. And as long as you don't want zoas, it's fine.
Yeah, and so then that's like I'm not bothered. So there's an aiptasia in that tank. There's been one on the base of the Scully for a while as well. And I keep thinking I've got a Dremel, so I keep thinking I should pull that out and just cut the base off a bit, because it'd take me 10 minutes. But I don't really care, because it's going to happen at some point, and I can deal with it. I can get Bergie and nudibranchs or peppermint shrimp or whatever. So but it's like the first time I got aiptasia, it was like the end of the world. I was like, oh God, I need to do something immediately. And the reality is, you don't. It's not that bad.
I think a lot of the things that are in that we come across are mentally worse for us than actually worse. So if you have an aiptasia in your tank, it's the thought of what that could turn into rather than the fact that you've got one. Do you see what I mean?
And the reason that it's that thought is because you'll go online And you'll see people say, and people will, most people, if you talk to most people who've got aiptasia, they'll be like, yeah, it looks a bit ugly. Sometimes it gets out of control and it's not good.
Yeah.
It looks a bit ugly and I don't really like it. But every now and then you'll have someone who's the tank's been taken over and it stings all their corals.
Yeah.
I've never had an aiptasia sting a coral. I've had them growing right next to it. It's never done it. It's not that it doesn't do it.
Yeah.
It's just that sometimes it's not a problem. So, but you'll read that and you'll read stories about they sting all your corals. They spread it like crazy. They look ugly. They'll take over their entire rockscape. So you think, oh God, I got to get rid of it.
That's interesting though. You show someone you've got a brand new tank. They've never kept coral before or anything. You put an aiptasia in there. They're like, look at this beautiful squishy thing. It's the most. Oh, and it's spreading. There's like 3 of them. I'm doing so well.
Yeah.
So it's actually knowledge,
perception,
which is what makes this. Yeah, it's the perception of how they are rather than what they actually are, which makes them bad.
Would a rose by any other name smell so sweet?
It depends if it's an aiptasia, it will spread everywhere and sting all your corals.
Rose aiptasia, but yeah. So in terms of fish that eat aiptasia, there are a few copperband and aiptasia eat filefish, the main ones. But
it's not my copperband.
No, I like copperbands, although they're a bad idea because they're so difficult to keep and so likely to die, and it's not nice when that happens. But I would prefer peppermint shrimp or Bergia nudibranchs. I've never been able to use Bergias because I have wrasse, and they just go like, "Oh, cheers, 50 quid."
Yeah, that's the problem with them.
But in this tank, in my water box, I did a video on this weekend, by the way, the Friday, if you've seen.
Yeah.
You haven't.
I have not seen that one, although I am an avid viewer of your channel.
That tank looks just so good. I love it at the moment. Anyway, so there are no wrasse in there, and I don't think any of the fish will eat Bergias. So I might try them at some point, but it's not necessary now. But aiptasia, just don't worry about it. It's not most things in the hobby. It's good to deal with things quickly. If you see an outbreak, it's better to try to deal with it quickly.
Absolutely.
Before it gets too much of a problem. But at the same time, just don't hit the panic button. There are very few things that are actually going to cause you major problems.
If you see one on a rock, get a chisel, chip that section of the rock off.
Yeah.
Job done. If it's just one, you've just solved your aiptasia problem.
Yeah, exactly.
If you have to smash up all your rock because you've got 50, it's a bit more difficult.
It's probably not one. But then with that being said, there was one in there and it's gone, and I put a peppermint shrimp in, and it's never come back. And in my water box tank as well, it's come back now, but that's because I've introduced it on a frag plug. When I first set that tank up, I had an aiptasia. I was like, oh God, here we go. And I got rid of it, manually just threw it away. And 12 months later, absolutely nothing. So there are times when you'll just have one, or the others don't survive for whatever reason. So it's not always a pain in the backside. All right, next question. And we'll come on to the chat. So I haven't forgotten about you. I haven't forgotten my promise, my pinky swear. So next question. What saltwater fish eat algae? Algae is another thing. And I feel like these questions come from people who've dipped their toe in the freshwater, which is really common, isn't it? I did it. You did it as well, I think. You try freshwater, then you move to saltwater. Because like when the problems I had with freshwater tanks were snails.
Yes, absolutely.
Snails and algae. And the only way you can get rid of snails is loaches, and loaches will get massive, but you do it anyway. And algae was just difficult. You used Plex before and you said it was fine.
I had Plex, and there was another, I don't know freshwater fish very well, but another sort of
Corridoras the Octocinclus, I think.
That's it, yeah.
Yeah, but in a freshwater tank, it's more of a problem. In a saltwater tank, and again, it can be a problem, and you can get a tank overrun by algae. But algae is pretty easy to deal with for the most part. If you know what to do, basically. If I've had tanks overrun with algae before because I wasn't doing the right thing.
Yeah.
And it's like, but now it's like I've got algae in my main tank. The bits where the fish can't reach, it grows. The bit where the fish can reach, it don't grow.
Yeah.
So if you've got the right cleanup crew,
or you can do what I did, and in one day with the Red Sea tank that was overrun with turf algae, I just put in like, I don't know, 6 tangs, which were like oversized, massive, as well as 3 urchins or something. I decimated it in like 3 days.
Happy days. There you go. So put 6 tangs in any tank. Put 6 tangs in a nano tank is what you're saying.
That's my advice. That's my advice for everyone. Put a load of tangs in. And I was shutting down my 1,000-litre tank, so they need somewhere to go. That's why it solved it. I wouldn't recommend that to anyone.
But the good, so this is actually, that's a really good question though. What saltwater fish eat algae? Because there's loads. I'm going to do a video on this soon.
Yeah.
But that you don't just want a tang. You don't just want a zebrasoma tang. You want a zebrasoma tang because they will eat the big bits of algae. You want a tomini tang or a coal tang, a bristle-tooth tang, because they scrape the rocks all day long and get the mini bits. You want a foxface because they'll probably eat bubble algae, for example.
And your coral.
And your coral. Well, I've never had that problem, but yeah, it's a risk for sure.
Yeah.
You also want an urchin. You want some crabs. You want a load of snails.
Yeah.
You want Astorina starfish. Oh, you didn't say anything. You want all sorts of things, basically.
No, you don't want Astorina starfish.
I'm gonna tell you this. So I've got Astorinas in my main tank, and I've got Astorinas in my water.
I know you like to add them to your tanks on purpose for some reason.
I did that today. I deliberately introduced Astorinas.
Why? You're literally insane. Stop doing that.
No, because I've got these couple of tiny little patches of algae that the fish, my cleanup crew isn't touching, and I was like, the more mouths, the better. And Astorinas,
almost like some really smart man told you that.
Very true, he did indeed. But it's right, and it's the way to deal with it. And they've got little mouths. They'll eat something different that my other cleanup crew will do. So.
Yeah, but they're ugly, look, see, this is a perfect example of someone who doesn't care about them, which is obviously you, and someone who does care about them. I had them for years in my 1,000-litre tank, and it never was really an issue. But when they have something, they're considered a pest. They come with that stigma of being a pest. So if I give them to someone else, people will go, Ryan gave me an STD. So you see, so I have to check my corals now for your Astorinas.
Yeah.
What I'm going to start doing is if someone goes to me, I got Astorinas, whoa, don't talk to me.
Reef Dork, yeah.
Here's Reef Dork's personal number. Give him a call.
But the thing, if you've got my Astorinas, if you bought a coral off me particularly,
yeah.
I deliberately introduced them to that tank and my other tank. I've deliberately introduced them to all my tanks. I'm getting a gurgling noise. All my tanks, and they're fine. They're not going to do any harm. Yeah. So embrace it.
I'll get I know this is not a good thing, and I know you have a thing against them. I will get a Harlequin shrimp at some point, and then just gradually move it around each tray. Look, I've got like 8 tanks. I think if it starves in one tank, I understand. If I've got 8 tanks that it can definitely not starve in by moving around.
By the time he's done tank number 8, you can probably go back into tank number 1. Yeah,
that's what I mean. Yeah,
maybe. Okay. All right, I'll let you have that. But I don't.
Thanks, Harlequin shrimp police.
You're welcome. But I will drop in every now and then
just to check.
Yeah. Okay.
Excuse me, have you got a permit for that Harlequin shrimp?
Exactly. Yeah, from Reef Dork. There are 2 more questions on this list, and then we'll go to the chat. And the first one, actually I say there's 2. What saltwater fish can live in a 5-gallon tank, a 20-gallon tank, a 30-gallon tank? So basically small.
What saltwater fish can live in freshwater?
Well, that was the other one. So let's look at that one now. Actually, first off, so what saltwater fish can live in freshwater?
I know of one.
What's that?
Do you know of any? Pardon?
A shark.
Is a bull shark can live in both fresh and salt water, and that is technically a fish. That is the only one that I know of.
Correct.
There are some that live in brackish water.
So this is a lot of. Yeah. This is true. But the thing is, you get people often genuine, and that's a genuine question. That's up there on Google, which means lots of people have asked it. And the other question people ask is, can I acclimate my saltwater fish to freshwater? So could I, for example, get a clownfish and then drip acclimate it over the course of a month until it's happy in my freshwater tank?
Yeah.
No, you can't.
No. But what you can do is you can keep it in freshwater for about 5 minutes, and then because you can freshwater dip them, so technically they can survive in freshwater, but not for long term.
Yeah, for literally 5 minutes. But so, and what saltwater fish can live in freshwater? Just if you want a saltwater fish, you need a saltwater tank. They don't even like low salinity.
Of course. Yeah.
So So we'll move on from that because that's a fairly easy question.
Yeah.
Get a bull shark. And bull sharks, by the way, if you want to keep one, they are about the most aggressive shark in the world as well. So
yeah, I think they are. Yeah.
You're better off going for a black tip reef shark or
where's whale shark guy?
And Nersha, he's in the house.
Oh, is he? I thought he was.
And Les is here as well.
No, I think that's just Les. I haven't seen the whale shot guy.
He's here. I've seen him. He was asking
A few
about.
People were saying mollies with regards to the answer to that question.
That's the other way around, though. Really.
Yes, the other way around.
And even then, I don't get why people keep freshwater mollies in saltwater tanks.
They look so weird.
Exactly.
It's like you have all of these amazing fish that are available to you, and if you've got an algae problem, there's probably like 30 fish that can deal with your algae problem relatively easily.
That's the thing, because people always, whenever I say that, people are always like, "Oh, they're good at eating algae." Yeah, so is a foxface, so is an urchin, so is the snail, so is tang, so is
what I'm going to do, obviously, with the angelfish tank, as soon as that has started, they're going to go on like relatively early, not too early, because obviously I don't want them to starve. I'll have tangs in there. I will have urchins in there. I'll have snails in there. As soon as I turn the lights on, so algae starts to grow, that'll all be in there. I'm going to try and completely avoid any form of. You can't avoid the brown stage and the diatoms and things like that, but you can avoid the algae stage definitely, because you just put fish in there, so you never see it.
I've not had an algae stage on that tank, and it's almost a year old now.
Yeah,
and I don't have any fish in there that eat algae.
Really?
Still, yeah.
Oh, I suppose you've got some cleanup crew in there though.
Yeah, exactly. I've got a load of urchin.
I never had an algae stage on the coral farm either, not at all.
Exactly. So you can avoid it, absolutely.
Yeah.
A load of stuff that eats it. The last one, and Jason, there you go, well shot guy.
Oh, he is.
And finally, then the final question was, what saltwater fish can live in a 5-gallon tank, a 10-gallon tank, a 20-gallon tank, and a 30-gallon tank? So 5 gallons that's tough. That's 20 liters.
I know the answer to all of those. Clownfish. A clownfish can live in every single one of those tanks.
I wouldn't keep a clownfish in a 20-liter tank.
Wait, how big is 20? Oh, I suppose the smallest one is usually 30 liters.
That on paper is 53 liters. The reality is it holds 40.
The usual small desktop ones are about 30 liters, I think. Is that? So I'm just trying to picture it.
Maybe. 10-gallon for me is the minimum for a clown, because it's not like they might be okay.
Yeah,
but it's a bit tight, isn't it? And even that tank, ideally, that's a bit smaller than I'd like. I've got 2 in there, and they are fine. But can they live there? Yeah, they can. Do they like it? Maybe. But 5 gallon, and I'm talking about 5 gallons. I wouldn't do that personally.
What about tiny gobies? A Catalina goby, obviously, but that's a very specific tank. That needs to be a cooler water tank.
That's the thing. And there are some other small gobies. There's another similar one to the Catalina. I can't remember what it's called. But there are a couple of very small gobies. Yellow clown goby are pretty small. But if you've got, I just don't like the idea of a 5-gallon 20-liter tank. For me, that's just, if you want to do saltwater, don't do 5 gallons. I'm sure there'll be people who watch this who've done it successfully, but it's just a bad idea.
You know how you don't like big tanks? Like
I know,
yeah. I hate small tanks.
Yeah,
I hate even like this is going to offend some people because they won't think it's small. I don't even like 300-liter tanks. I'm genuinely serious. The smallest tank I've ever enjoyed has been a 400-liter tank.
You don't get why I've got that tank. You're like, why? Do you like it?
I don't know. Because although you say and there is, to some extent, there is less work involved with the smaller tank. But my theory is, if you're going to take 10 liters out for that tank, or a tank double that size, you have to take 20 liters out. It's not much difference with regards to the maintenance on it, is there?
That's like, but a 10 or 20 liters, doesn't really make a difference. But if you like my main tank, if I do a water change, 10%, it's 50 liters. That's no joke. 10 liters on that is a piece of cake. I just use a small bucket.
I did a 400-liter change today, just for like 5 minutes before the stream. Exactly.
And how did you do that? You paid a plumber to specifically set the system up for you. So
true. I should change my channel to the lazy reefer.
The lazy. Everyone's lazy, but that's the right way to do it. There was someone did a talk on Macro or something called The Right Kind of Lazy. Yeah. And it was things like I can't remember, but that's the right way to be lazy is to implement things that get around your laziness. smart
I think
testers, all these sorts of things.
there's like a progression in the hobby where you start off with like maybe a small tank, and then you get bigger tank and a bigger tank, and then eventually you get to the size, and then you're like, right, well, I'm not looking after this big tank anymore because it's too difficult. So I'm going to try and make it easier on myself.
Yeah.
So, but that's never done at the very start of the hobby because people don't want to pay the extra expense usually at the beginning. It's usually done at like when you're in longer term, if you see what I mean. If you basically, if people don't have an auto top up, for example, that's like they're like £100. Or even less than that. They're probably like £70. Like you might get a cheaper one. Change your life an auto top up, as far as I'm concerned.
I wouldn't ever run a tank without an auto top up.
There are people that still do.
I know.
Loads of people probably do. They go, "Oh, I can't justify it." But
salinity will cause you so many problems.
Yeah.
It won't take long. If your salinity goes off, give it a couple of weeks, you've got big problems.
So, I think I've upset Steve Webb because he says some people haven't got the space for any other than nano. Look, that I totally accept that. There's also a financial cost to a bigger tank. It's just the same as I love big tanks. Like Alex loves big tank. Like Alex hates big tanks, and Alex has a nano tank, and whereas I wouldn't have a nano tank. It's just personal preference.
Exactly.
What I will say, I'm in awe of people that I'm far more in awe of people that have amazing Aquapora tanks where they're less than 100 liters than a like 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 liter tank with Aquapora in.
I've never seen a 100 liter acro tank.
Have I ever seen one?
Oh no, I've never. Have you?
I've seen. I don't know how long they last for, if you see what I mean. But I have seen nano tanks that have Aquapora in them, and I just think, how are you doing that?
Yeah,
like how you have.
And this is one thing with one of the problems with the internet generally, and social media, and particularly things like Instagram and YouTube. I'm guilty of it, I'm sure. Is you'll see a tank, and it'll look wicked, and there'll be an Aquapora in it, and it looks like it's based out and it's quite big, and you're like, oh my god, that's amazing. Maybe I can do that. And then the next day after they posted that photo or video,
might die.
Exactly. And it turns out it was in another tank. And I do it all the time. I post an update, and I won't post an update for 6 months.
Yeah.
And in that 6 months, stuff's gone wrong.
Yeah, of course.
But it looked fantastic on the video.
Yeah.
The next day or the next week or the next month, things started, and it's just seeing is not believing with Reef.
there is definitely an issue with that with the hobby, because if you look at not obviously you can't do it because you haven't you can do it. If you look at the tank you had 5 years ago and go, what fish and what coral do I still have from that tank? They don't necessarily die. You might have sold some of them, like you had some soft corals that you don't want anymore or whatever. But I bet if you look 5 years back, very few fish and coral are probably the same as what are in your tank now, probably. That's what it's like for me. To be fair, I had one major crash, which obviously that changed a lot there. But other than that, it's been relatively stable since then. But that was probably, I don't know, 7 years ago now.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, so I change my lights very often, of course, and that's not just limited to equipment. I'm the same with coral, so I'm always whipping stuff out and moving on, and that's just my life.
You got in trouble for that once, whipping stuff out, didn't you?
Whee! Yeah. Very good. Told you, joke. Anyway. Right, we've finished the questions from the internet.
Yes.
So if you enjoyed that part of the stream, smash the subscribe button
and the like button
and
go buy some of my coral,
because we do this every week, and it's brilliant. So and there's video every other fortnight on a Friday, which is even better. Can you believe that? Even better than this.
There's one thing which I actually mentioned at the start before we started that I would like to talk about, because I think before we get on to other people's questions, because obviously I get a lot of questions asked to me, and one of the questions which comes up relatively frequently from different people, whether they bought from me or not, is I keep X coral. Why can't I keep Y coral? So, for example, people might go, I can keep Scollies, but I can't keep Trackies, or I keep Aquapora, but I can't keep frog spawns. The reality is, firstly, these are living creatures, so every single one is different. If you put 10 people in a room with another sick person, 6 of those people might get sick, 4 of them might not get sick. You don't know why that happens. Well, maybe some got better immune systems, The other thing is corals are from entirely different places, different depths, different, like they have different light and different flow. And what I can 100% guarantee you, none of the corals that are in the ocean are kept in fish tanks because that's not where they belong.
Fish tanks don't grow naturally.
They don't grow naturally in the ocean. So just because you can, for example, I know you can keep Acropora amazingly, can't you?
I'll come back onto that, but to an extent, yeah.
Sometimes you can keep Acropora. No, I consider you a very good Acropora keeper, but I know that your acans don't do very well in your main tank. So you might be one of those people that come to me and say, I can keep acros. They're meant to be really hard. Why can't I keep acans? And the reality is acans need entirely different water and lighting and flow to acros. So just because you're an expert at one specific coral doesn't mean you're an expert at all corals.
And even in my tank, there are times when I've got some acros that look fantastic. I've got others. I've got one I've had for 2 years. It might have grown. If it has, I'd have to look at a photo of before and after. It literally hasn't, and that's not uncommon. I've got another one, a tenuis, annoyingly, because that's what they do, that has grown 20% maybe in 18 months. Yeah. And there are other times when I'll have a coral that dies next to another coral that is the same genus. It's like, why not? And also I've also had times when, like, I had a salinity spike not that long ago.
Yeah.
Schoolboy error, but nonetheless it happened.
Yeah.
And a couple of my acros stripped, like started one at a time. And that's the thing. Like, and one of the people often say, and I always see this on like Facebook or whatever. They say all my corals are fine. It's just this one. What's the problem? And the reason that's the wrong way to look at it is because you're trying to focus on one issue. When you're up this close looking at the problem, you need to step back. It's wood for the trees sort of thing. Because if you've got one coral that's dead, it might be that there's one particular type of coral that doesn't like your tank, or that there's a one particular pest on that coral. But the more probable answer is that's the first of a line of dominoes that are about to fall over.
Yes.
So when I had my salinity, one acro stripped, and I was like, that's weird. Wonder why I did that. And I was like, actually, it's in quite a still area, so maybe it's not getting enough flow. Yeah. And the reality is, well, it had been in that area for 18 months and it wasn't getting much flow, but it was fine. Yeah. But it was only later when another one stripped that I was suddenly like, hang on a second.
Something's very wrong.
Exactly. But it's hard to see that because when the first one went, I didn't think, right, do a full test of a full suite of tests, which is what I should do. And there are times like that. So I'm a relatively experienced reefer. I've been doing this for 8 years. That's long enough. And I know the basics. And I should know that when one coral dies, I always say, and I do know, run a full suite of tests. Doesn't matter what you think you know about your tank. Oh, my parameters are great or whatever. Run a full suite of tests. And I didn't do it until the second one went. And then I did. And I was like, oh shit.
You almost can become relaxed.
I become arrogant because I think my tank looks wicked.
I didn't want to say that.
Coral, I know. I can put any coral in there. I do. And people do. But I can put any coral in there because the water is so good and the corals grow so fast that it's great. And that makes me complacent. And the reality is that you just always need to. There are times when I think, shall I dip that? Yeah, dip it every single time. Or do I need to test water this month? Yeah, you do. This week, every week. So
if I lose a coral, which and occasionally I do, I want to know why. And you don't always find out why, but I want to know if it's like if there's a cascade effect. Because obviously there's thousands of pounds in there for me. So if I started losing, say, if one Goniopora, for example, is not doing well, you go, bit weird. I've had that for a year. Why is that not doing well? That's one of those corals where you go, they're a bit like that, where they do. Yeah, I still want to know because I might have another 50 Gonnies in there. So am I about to? And if I can't find anything and another piece will go, I'll do an ICP test. But what I wanted to mention, so some corals like the Tropic Thunder or Sunset Montipora. So I've been growing these for years and years.
Triggering my PTSD now, Ryan. Tropic Thunder.
I didn't want to say, but basically these encrusting Monties, I've been growing them for years, and some of them I probably had for maybe 10 years. and I'll have 6 frags of them, all in the same place, within inches of each other, all of them getting the same flow, the same light, and all of a sudden, one of them will randomly die. The other, and they've been growing for ages, and they're still growing. The others keep growing, but one randomly dies. They're all genetically identical, and I have no idea why. And that really bothers me.
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it?
But that's what I mean. So when people say to me, I have 6 torches and one of them's not doing well, that it's just they're different.
It's not, if that's happening, it's probably a one-off, but often it won't be. It'll be the start of something else. But with you do that, just shows that sometimes normally you'll be able to figure out what's gone, what's happened, but quite regularly you won't, and a coral will just die. It hasn't died for no reason. There's been a reason. It's just you can't figure out. There's no way.
It could also have been something that you did 6 weeks ago.
Almost certainly is. Yeah.
Corals have a memory of when
corals never forget. Yeah.
And they punish you.
I remember
later.
You spiked the salinity, so I'm going to die now. So.
Yes, but they're like, oh, we're going to die when you don't remember, so you're just confused.
Yeah, you're changing your brand of GFO, right? I'm going to die in 6 weeks.
Yeah,
and then you'll think it's because you did a water change.
Exactly that.
Yeah, I did go through a spell of writing. I kept a spreadsheet. I still keep a spreadsheet, but I wrote down anytime I made any change or did anything, I wrote it down. The theory being I could go back and look.
Yeah,
but it just, for a start, it's a faff.
We've all been there at one point.
and it's meaningless, because you'll go back, a coral will die, and you'll go back 6 weeks, and you're like, well, I made that change. And you go back 2 months, you're like, well, I made that change. You go back 6 months, you go, well, I made that change. Well, which one was it?
But not just that, like, you'll never know. And is it relevant? If you worked out that every single time you changed your GFO, something died, then you'd go, okay, it might be something to do with that.
Crushing my phosphate or whatever.
Because you might be completely stripping it so that it's 0, but on a Monday it's 0, but you only test on a Friday. And then by the time Friday comes back round, you've got a bit of phosphate because you've been feeding all week.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're going to move on to the questions now. So I did say, if you're watching on the live, if you're watching live, post in the chat, and we will answer the questions.
I think
Les,
if they've reposted if they posted a question so far, repost it now, because there's been probably 300 comments since then.
Les has never had an ATO in 12 years.
Disappointed, Les. Firstly,
I'm disappointed.
What's wrong with you? And secondly, if you work out, it's probably like £6 a year that you've saved.
But and I'm not saying this is Les, but there are often times on Facebook you see someone will say, they'll make a controversial comment. I've never done a water change and my tank's fine, for example. And you're like, show me your tank. I bet that tank looks rubbish. But anyway, because sometimes people just like to make comments to say, look, this is okay. Right? Anyway, right. So the first one, Fish Guy Connor. What kind of coral can I keep in a 20-gallon? I mean, so the only limit with corals in terms of size is stability. You don't want to keep SPS in a small tank like that, 80 liters, because it's your parameters will swing and they won't like it.
If that tank is connected to 1,000-liter tank, as in so you got a 1,000-liter tank and then you got a 20-gallon on the side, wherever you want in it, because the water's stable. But so it's less about what you can keep and more about how stable is your water.
But there are some corals that aren't suitable, like in terms of growing. So most corals, if it grows too big, which all corals do at some point, you can frag them, so that's not really an issue. But there are some corals that, like in a small tank, like 20-gallon, it wasn't quite that small, but it was 250 liters, which is about 60, 70 gallons, something like that, 60 gallons.
Yeah.
And I had a couple of Capnella Kenya trees in it. And I found when I removed them, everything looked better, because presumably they're releasing toxins or some kind. So there are some corals like that you don't want to keep.
Yeah, true.
Because in a small body of water, if they pollute it, they'll foul it and they won't be good. But generally, any soft coral is going to be forgiving for the most part.
Yeah.
Not most LPS. A lot of LPS will be fine. Hardy LPS. So in this tank, this is smaller than a 20-gallon. That coral there is a trumpet coral, a Colostrea. That is a green star polyp. That's fallen on the sand bed, annoyingly, is a blasto. Blasto's fine. There's a Duncan in there as well. I'm going for, in that tank, I'm not going for gonnies. I'm not going for torchies, because they're tricky and they won't like it. I'm going for easy stuff. So those sorts of corals will be fine. What do you want to add to that list? Are you on mute? I can't hear you. You're on mute.
Yeah, sometimes I forget that. Just to clarify, torches are not the same as frog spawns and hammers in terms of care. They're just not. Torches are like a pain in the ass, and frog spawns and hammers generally are pretty okay. But that's another question. It's only because you mentioned it that I thought I'd mention.
Okay.
There was, when we were ready to move on, are we going to go in order? Because there was a question I wanted to tackle.
Tell me, we'll go in order because
Okay,
I don't want to jump around and miss people.
That's fine.
Any tips for McCuskers wrasse? As in a tip to give a McCuskers wrasse on, like, life, personal growth, or just go to Fish University. They're relatively easy. I mean, mine didn't like. Oh, well, other way around. My tang didn't like McCuskers wrasse. And it chased it and killed it. Ultimately,
I'm currently Googling what a McCuskers wrasse is, because wrasses are they're flasher wrasse.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Quite common.
Yeah. I just didn't recognize the McCuskers, but I just know the flasher wrasse.
Yeah, but they're I think they're relatively easy. I've had one, and the only reason it didn't work out was because it got killed by an aggressive fish.
That is the problem. They're one of those fish which is not very tough. So if you want to keep one, keep them with peaceful tank mates, because like you put another wrasse in there, the other wrasse will almost always harass it.
Oh, so I've never had wrasses harass other wrasses with the McCuskers, but they're quite showy as well. And I think some fish don't like that, like tangs, which is why my tang was aggressive.
They're walking around like this,
exactly.
swimming around I got
my fins out.
Look how great I am, and the other fish are like, oh yeah, well let's show you how great you are.
Take you down a peg.
Yeah.
Chris Durham, how much longer before you replace your lights again?
Coming soon.
So I can't say anything at the moment, but it might happen. It might happen. I'm afraid. But do you know what? Have you seen Breaking Bad, Ryan?
Yeah, yes, but a long time ago, so I don't really.
There's a scene. Spoiler alert! Turn off now if you haven't seen it yet. But there's a scene.
If you haven't seen it, then like it's a bit late.
There's a scene in there where Jesse goes to therapy, and he goes to this like counselling getaway session, and he comes back and he's like, "I have to accept myself for who I am. I am the bad guy, so I'm just going to be the bad guy, and I'm okay with it. And I've decided I'm the guy who changes lights. I'm going to accept it, and I'm just going to change lights every 6 months." So
fine.
That's it.
I'm surprised you don't kill more coral with all the lights you change.
I'm not going to change it that often. Aquakeeper 1000 question: what do you think about the tank shown in the video, the best reef tank in Europe? Have you seen that video? I haven't.
I have not.
No, sorry, don't know it then.
No.
ATO's question. Right, okay. I'm going to move on. I'm going to try to only look at comments that start with question in block capitals, by the way. So otherwise I can't see them, so I might miss them. One for you, Ekbal Izimi. I have 2 trackies showing skeletons, then die quickly after. Why?
I've only ever killed trackies. I'll be honest with you, I used to have trouble with trackies originally in my 1,000 litre tank, and I couldn't work out why. It's because they don't like very, very low nutrients at all. They really don't like it. Because what would happen? I'd put phosphate remover in, and then 2 weeks later it would be dead. And I'm pretty sure because I used to change my phosphate every single week on my 1,000 litres.
Jeremy Gay talked about this the other day, didn't he? He said that the guy Shane Danger, he was saying that trackies basically live in, like, there's more food than there is water.
I remember. So I was swimming, I was just snorkeling off the coast of Australia in the most turbulent water. And there was this trackie, I kid you not, which was rolling around. It was just rolling in the sand. And I was like, how the hell are you surviving? You're just like, you're being absolutely battered. And I picked it up and actually wedged it into a rock. It could still be there. But it was being absolutely smashed and just like, it was just bumping across these rocks. And I was thinking like, and it was really like silty water. So they definitely prefer that. But when I was looking, I was like, how come I used to kill these and you're being like smashed up by the waves and you'll be fine probably.
So it might well be feeding, but the first thing to do is test all your parameters.
Yeah.
And if you haven't calibrated your refractometer, do that, because your salinity might be off, but they like food. Yeah, Dan, question. I always see people using AB Plus and Aquaforest for coloration of corals. AB Plus, as in Red Sea Reef Energy.
Yeah, that is what it is, yeah.
Is this a necessary thing? No, absolutely 100% not. Don't
Yeah.
you do not, in my opinion, and you feed your corals. So I'm not saying
Not all. No, I actually have. I used to feed them, but not anymore. I feed, I think, 9 cubes of food, pellets,
yeah.
and nori every day now. So
I wouldn't bother feeding corals for the most part. Things like trackies or acans supposedly do respond well to feeding.
yeah,
But for the most part, I wouldn't ever bother feeding corals. Might it do good in some situations? Yes. But is it going to cause you more problems for most people? Yeah.
it can enhance growth and coloration, but it can also enhance phosphate problems, algae problems,
which reduces growth and coloration.
Yes. So it can. Don't get it wrong. You definitely, if you feed corals, they will grow faster. But is it necessary? No. And eventually, you won't want your corals growing faster. It's as simple as that.
Don't chase it as well. If a coral's not looking great, don't think, oh, you know, if I can add some food, it'll look good in a fortnight.
Yeah.
Patience and making sure it's in the right place, it's got in the right light. Test your par, maybe.
The reality is, you could probably feed them every day for 4 weeks and notice no difference. You just don't, like, on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
You don't. It's like when your partner gets their haircut and she comes home and you haven't noticed she had her haircut, and you're it's because you see her every day. So
my missus noticed I had my haircut.
Oh, well, she'd be surprised if you came in with a toupee, wouldn't she? I think she would notice that.
Exactly. All right, Jamie's Reef question. Alex, does your missus work for Ralph Lauren? No, she doesn't. I wish she did.
She has a cooler job. I don't know if it's allowed to be mentioned.
Saving a lot of money in t-shirts. No, she works for Lego. Yeah.
That's so cool that she works for Lego.
Yeah, I did have a Lego, which is part of the reason I've got that. Although actually, I bought all them myself. But anyway. Owen's Aquaculture. How do you feel about breeding saltwater guppies? No, to feed the fry to butterflies and largemouth fish. What's a saltwater guppy?
Yeah, that's true. You don't. Yeah, true.
I hate the idea, to be honest. Sorry.
There are the exception, but most fish will take like living food of some sort. And not living. You can get live food easily. You don't need to feed them saltwater guppies. But most fish will take prepare food if you train them on it eventually. So even that angelfish was eating the mastic today. After a week, today it finally started. I just mastic by itself. It started eating it, and I was like, "Yes, I've done it."
I do. So my cleaner shrimp spawned the other day. Never seen it before. Thought it was really cool. And they were one of them was upside down, just spraying baby cleaner shrimp everywhere. Yeah. And that was a proper good meal for all of my fish. And I like my tiny little pipefish. I was like, yes, they're getting some food. Yeah, that's fine. That's cool. But why do you want guppies?
Were both your shrimp pregnant at the same time?
I didn't notice.
Yeah, because they can both be pregnant at the same time.
Oh, really? Cool.
Yeah, and not only that, the shrimps as well. You can have one shrimp in by itself, and I think something like 4 months later it can become pregnant because it's stored. No, it's stored from when it had a good time in the ocean.
That's disgusting.
Just walks around with a little packet of sperm basically for whenever it needs it.
Oh, God, all right. God, this got grim, didn't it? But no, I've seen cleaner shrimp with eggs thousands and thousands of times.
Yeah.
And the first time you see it, you're like, oh wow, I'm gonna have shrimp babies. And then the 100th time you've done it, you're like, yeah, whatever, mate. But this time they spawn.
Well. Yeah.
And I suspect quite at night, so I suspect they do it quite regularly. You just don't notice it. But Samuel Newman question: is low iron glass worth the extra money? I've never had high iron glass, but whenever I see low iron next to nice glass, next to bad glass, it's just so much. It looks so much nicer.
I can tell you 100% that it is worth it. 100%. It is. There is a massive difference when you look at a tank that has clear glass or just normal glass. If you look down the side of the glass, you can see how much it takes out. And remember, we don't buy these tanks or put all this work in our reef tanks so that we don't look at them. We don't spend hours cleaning the algae off. You want it to be the best possible thing you can get, like viewing experience you can get, as far as I'm concerned. We have people get roller mats. They use carbon. They do all these things to try and get as clean as possible. And then they got shit glass.
There comes a time when you're obsessed with the hobby. Even if you've been in 6 months and you're getting into it, when you'll do anything to get clear water. So you'll put activated carbon in.
Yeah.
Even cleaning the outside of the glass makes a difference. Cleaning the inside of the glass regularly makes a difference. So there is no limit to the money I would pay, apart from the money I have.
All right,
I would pay,
cha-ching.
I would pay I would sell my house if it gave me more clear water. The clear water is everything.
Yeah.
So and I know clear water and glass are different.
Yeah.
But it is worth the money. Yeah. Full stop. Next question. McCuskers Ras. Any tips for keeping them?
We did that a minute ago.
That's the same one.
Yeah.
This is not a question. It just says likes are free.
That's true. Everyone start liking the video.
Exactly. Everyone does like the video.
Oh, good.
But they just don't
show us. Show us so we feel good. It's like a little ego boost for you.
I have a very shallow ego, and I need to be fed. I'm like a copper band.
It's very fragile, isn't it?
Instead of aiptasia, I feed on likes and subscriptions. Tropic Thunder. No, Les. No. I don't want it. Scrolling down. Question. And I'm going past questions that I'm sure are being asked, but they don't have the capital. You say get a fish to eat algae. I'm battling hair algae in my 100-litre nano. Get an urchin. I have a tuxedo urchin. You've got an urchin. And various snails, but losing. Phosphate 0.06, nitrate. You're probably if you've got a load of algae, it's probably soaking up a lot of nutrients. So you've probably got excess there. I would check in that situation, I'd check my source water. So if you're getting it from your local fish shop, for a start, that's a mistake with almost any. There are a couple of local fish shops that are in the country that are good, but there aren't many. So I would generally check your source water and do water changes, or maybe you're not doing water changes. But even then, you'd be adding fresh water in your auto top off. Ryan, anything to add? Oh, and manual removal as well.
Nothing other than what you've basically just said, if I'm honest, or get 2 urchins. All 3.
Yeah, okay. And he's followed up because being told nitrate and phosphate are low because the algae is using it. Yeah, correct.
That does happen.
Yeah. And he's using Nopox. I don't.
You basically have to exhaust. What I found with the Red Sea tank is, I think the algae comes off some of the rocks as well. They literally use some of the phosphate or whatever's stored in the rock at first, because I know this because I know someone who has mostly ocean, mostly real rock from the ocean, and then one piece of a man-made rock, and the ocean rock has nothing growing on it, and the man-made rock's got hair algae, and you're like, it's as clear as anything that there's something about that rock.
Do you know what? So on my tank that I did a video on this weekend, I tested the phosphate before I made the video, and I was just like, let me just make sure I'm saying the right thing for my parameters. And it used to be about 0.25 or something like that, which is high, but whatever.
Yeah.
And it was 0.8. And I look back at my test results, and I'd done a test result the day before I put this new aquascape in. And it was low, and then literally a week after, suddenly it rocketed it up. Now it's possible that it could be something else, but I can't think of anything else. I'm almost certain it was the aquascape.
Yeah.
It's not a problem. There's no algae on it. It's cool, and I think I can get that under control quickly. But it's a thing. It's a source. So watch out.
And eventually it will become depleted. It's the same as anything. It's not like a magic rock which just always has phosphate.
Yeah.
It does become depleted.
Phosphate.
But to deplete it, you need to get it you need to get the algae consumed by something so that you can then absorb the phosphate from the waste of the fish that have processed it.
Yeah. And then you remove the fish waste from water changes.
Yeah.
Because that had a spike of phosphate. And actually I used the same aquascape.
Yeah.
So, and I didn't do the test at the same time, so I can't be sure it was the scape, but it probably was. But I didn't ever have any algae problems apart from a cyano outbreak. And the only time I had a problem was when things bottomed out to 0.
Sorry.
And that's why I don't like Nopox, and not just Nopox, any carbon dosing. What's it called? Tropic Marin, any of them. I don't like them because they're very good at what they do, but that's the problem. If you take your eye off the ball, they're so aggressive, you can strip it out to 0.
Yeah.
And I just don't like that.
On the angelfish tank, I'm actually, during the cycle, and I'm not sure if this is going to cause a problem, I'm going to run phosphate remover during the initial stage. Remember, those rocks have come from someone else in someone else's tank.
Yeah,
I have no idea anything about them, so I'm going to run carbon and phosphate from day one, which I don't think people normally do during a cycle. I don't know if it could throw out my nutrient balance, but
I'd be careful about that because you want to get nutrients in your tank to start with.
yeah, but do I want phosphate or do I want ammonia?
But why are you planning on doing that when you don't know what the phosphate is?
Because it's come from a tank, like it's obviously come from someone else's tank, which I assume has obviously had a lot of fish and coral. Most people have phosphate problems.
You know what they say about assumption.
That's true.
But that's the point. I'm not saying it's a bad idea. I just think that if you're saying I'm going to do this, you're treating a problem that you think you will have rather than
I want to try to. I don't know if there was a downside to doing it, if you see what I mean.
The only time I've ever had problems with nutrients is when they've been zero. I do not like zero nitrate and phosphate, and most people will tell you that. So I don't mind having high. I do mind having low.
See, you already know this. I'm taking this tank very slowly, like incredibly slowly, apparently. So there's not going to be any corals in there on day one. Like there's not going to be any corals in there. I'll put a fish in there. Like I'll put some tangs, and there'll be plenty of fish in there before I put a single coral in, probably. Yeah, but just because I'm not in any rush, and this is my tank. I'm doing this for me. I have to remind everyone who watches my video and then sends me a message just after I post the video saying, "Can I have an update on the video you just did from the tank from earlier?"
But the thing is, I like that as well because there are times when, and I don't think I've done this, but there are times when YouTubers set up a tank and then they'll do a video every week where it's, "Hey, week 1 is setting up, week 2 adding cleanup crew, week 3 adding fish, week 4 adding corals," and there's good reason for that because people love it and they lap it up. But it's not a good idea. You don't want to be doing that. So it's much better. And the reality is, if you've made those 4 videos over the space of a year, people will switch off and they get bored. I've tried it and it doesn't
I know
work.
what you mean.
Whereas if you make them in 4 weeks in a row, it does really well. But I prefer just to do my own thing, and I like that you're doing the same.
If this tank is for me, I know I'm showing it to other people, but if you have a tank that's not yours, it's a chore. You've set up tanks for videos specifically, haven't you? That you no longer have. I'm sure there was a nano tank or something you set up.
There was one, I had open for 3 days.
And it would be a chore to look after it. And I don't want this to be a chore. I want this to reignite my passion in I haven't lost my passion, but whenever you turn a hobby into a job, it becomes more of a job than a hobby. This is my own personal tank.
A jobby.
Yes. So
okay,
I'm doing it at my own pace. Stop messaging me, Alex, telling me to hurry up.
Yeah, I do that a lot, to be fair.
You're one of the worst offenders.
I know. I didn't realize you were having a go at me, right?
I'm not having a go at anyone. I'm just letting people know.
Sounds
like if I get bored, I'll close it down. Simple as that. So if you want videos for the next 5 years, then let me go slowly.
I'm still going to text you, so sod you.
Yeah.
Godlike character. Question: is it worth upgrading Radeon Gen 5?
You missed one. You missed one I wanted you to talk about from Dragon Hunter.
Dragon Hunter.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
Since
you overtook, hang on, I'm reading it out for the podcast.
That's
Ryan,
fine.
Since Alex overtook you in subscribers, didn't you say you would go buy £10,000? Also, did
10,000? Yeah.
10K. What? I don't. What's
okay? So he's saying that I said I was going to buy 10K subscribers just to be above you again.
Right. Yeah.
That's the first thing. But the second bit, which is the more important bit, is did you get my email about the coral ID? Okay. Now I don't know who you are. I'll be honest, because obviously there's no name on it. I have to be honest with you. I get probably 10, sometimes 15 people send me all over the world. Send me pictures of corals. That saying, what is this coral? What is this? I don't reply to them. I don't have time to reply to everyone every day about every coral. It's not being mean, if you see what I mean. It purely comes down to there are 56,000 people that have access to my phone. So it becomes, and people send me pictures of their corals. They send me pictures of their tanks. They send me 99% of things I don't reply to. I look at all of them because I have to, because it's a business thing. But it's the same as if you're sitting and watching TV at 11 o'clock at night and someone sends you a message saying, I don't know, maybe you've got a dog saying my dog's not eating. What do you recommend to feed the dog? you're going to go, I'm sitting watching TV.
Yeah.
So,
So a couple of things. Firstly, so you have 56,000 people who have access to your phone. I have 57,000. So, you know.
oh no, sorry, 55, isn't it? Sorry, 55,600, and you have
No.
55,700. Yes.
But anyway, but so the answer to that is because I get the same. I don't, and like the difference with me is I don't run a business, so
Yeah.
I don't need to reply. I don't
Yeah.
reply to 99.9% of Instagram messages.
Yeah.
And if I tend to read them, but if it's from a company or something, then I'll reply. But generally I won't because I get so many, and
Yeah.
I it's hard work as it is. So, you know, but the point is, don't bother. Don't save yourself the time. The best time is these live streams.
Yes, that's what I mean. So
Yeah.
because what usually happens, we do this live stream. As soon as the live stream ends, I get like 20 messages going, just watch your live stream, got these questions. And I've just sat here for 2 hours. And there were times we always say at the end, is there any questions? If you don't ask the question, then
that's it. So do it now, because these are the times, because we can't do it. So but that's part of the reason we do this.
Okay, but very quickly, Dragon Hunter, if you're the person who sent me the picture of the torch coral, which I assume you are because it came in like probably 10 minutes before, the shop is correct. It is a torch coral. I don't know what type of torch coral it is. It's just a green torch coral.
Facebook is the best. Ask BRS TV. There's a Facebook group called Ask BRS TV or something like that.
Yeah,
that's a really good, because you'll get someone replying instantly.
Yeah,
and there'll be loads of people on there saying.
Yeah, and that's a whole group, a whole collection of people, rather than one person having to reply.
Yeah, very true.
I feel bad when I don't reply, but you would see what I mean, because you want to reply to everyone, but I would be sitting here all day.
Yeah. So I reply to YouTube comments. I don't reply to Instagram messages.
Yeah.
Because I'm a YouTuber. I'm not an Instagrammer. So if you comment on my videos, I'll probably reply.
Half the time you don't reply to my comments for like 2 hours.
No, yeah. Godlike Character says, question, is it worth upgrading Gen 5 Radions for Gen 6? Yeah, buy more lights. Oh, I love it. It gives you a buzz, gives you a rush.
I don't know the answer, but I doubt it, if I'm honest, because my Gen 5 lights grow brilliantly. I don't know the difference between them. So
the only thing that people, or one of the things that people have clocked onto with this is Devon from Reef Dudes did a video where he upgraded from Gen 5 to Gen 6, and so the spread of them is much better, or much improved, should I say. Yeah. And what he found was that he had coral growing on the underside of rock where they wouldn't grow before, because it was spreading the light and bouncing off the glass and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And I've seen BRS refer to that a couple of times, and a lot of people are like, oh wow, that's amazing. But it's like, is it? That is cool. I'm not saying it's not, and I'm not saying they're not a good light. They are. Are they better, in inverted commas? Maybe, yeah. But Gen 5, nothing wrong with Gen 5 Radion. It's a bloody good light, as you know, because you.
The whole farm runs on them, and the Gen 4s are fine too. I loved my Gen 4s.
And I'm the worst culprit for this, because I'm not practicing what I preach. But upgrading your lights isn't going to make you happy. You just chase your dreams. But I still do it. So yeah, buy them.
No, didn't I say to you the other day? I just don't understand why I put lights on. I set them to whatever the basic things are, and I never think about them again. Never.
And this is the funny thing is, so this is, and I heard someone say the other day, the way someone does anything is the way they do everything. So in you and I, we were talking about this the other day. In the way I run my tank, without realizing it, that is the way I run my life.
Yeah, it's chaotic.
Exactly. Yeah, I've got like the amount of microphones I've gone through. You wouldn't believe it. I've got cameras. I've got 4 audio recorders in front of me, let alone God knows what else. I love all that stuff.
Yeah,
that's what in every aspect of my life, and it means that as a result, I've replaced my lights every 2 months.
Whereas I've been using the same iPad to edit my videos, I think for 10 years. 10 years. It's so old now, I can't even... This is genuinely true. It no longer has access to the internet. You can't open web pages. That's how old it is. But it still has access to iMovie, and that's what I edit on. So...
I've had 3 editing PCs in the time I've been doing this channel in 5 years. 3 editing PCs.
That iPad was the best thing I ever bought. Because that's how I started the channel, and think of all the money that it's made me since that moment.
Yeah. Mark Swan, question: what's the softest way to move rock around the tank? Because I want to do safest.
Yeah, it will be expensive.
Yeah. That's right. So it's the trouble with moving rock is, and I've done this a few times recently. I've rescaped, is that it's you've got awkward access. I've got spindly little pipe cleaner arms anyway.
Yeah.
So access is awkward because you're coming from a difficult angle. Rock is generally quite heavy, and it gets heavier when you take it out of water, of course.
True.
And so suddenly it becomes there's a tipping point when it becomes heavier.
Yeah.
There's normally not a lot of wiggle room. You might have a couple of inches either side of the rock, so it is difficult. But just be very, very careful. I don't think I've got any tips. Just be careful, and because when you're lifting it up, if you've puttied rock together, there's going to be a breaking point.
Oh, definitely.
So if you can do it piece by piece, that's better. But it's just be careful and take your time. Don't rush it.
I think he wants to move it round rather than. I suppose you're saying take it out to make it easier.
Well, that's because you said safest.
I would just move it to if there. We don't know how big your tank is. So is there a space at the front to move it? And that's what I would do. I would try and aquascape while still in the tank.
Yeah, yeah.
Mark's one of my customers, so I know he definitely has coral and his tank's up and running. So I believe
Mark. Stir up the sand bed too much either when you're doing that.
Yeah, that's
but
true.
just do it on a first thing in the morning on a Saturday when you've got hours on end. So things go wrong, and this is any reefing job. Never do it. Never start it on an evening when you're getting from work, or whatever. Do it when you've got time, and then you won't be rushing it. But I don't really have any specific advice for that. I can't think. Says question. Do you guys? How do you guys get your acros to grow up and not base out? My 6-month-old nice frags have yet to grow out in my tank, and flow is incredibly high. I have an acro that until recently had based out to that big, 8 inches across, and it had one branch. That was it. Honestly, that's no exaggeration. Like a dinner plate over my weir box and no branches. And I was like, grow up, stop basing out. You've done enough. You've got a solid base. So how do you do it? I mean, that's just the way some corals grow. There are times when, like, what I did find, and this is a common thing, if I had a couple of branches on that coral, if you snap a branch off, often it will grow back a few more branches. So you can sometimes encourage a coral, an acro, to grow by cutting off a branch, fragging off a little 1-inch branch, or whatever. But some corals will just base out for months on end, months and months and months, and they won't shoot up, and then suddenly, a year later, you'll be like bush everywhere.
Everything from they come out from everywhere. Yeah.
And mine's starting to do that now, but I don't think there's a specific. If there is, I'm not aware of it. But I don't think there's a specific thing you can do to stop a coral basing out.
If you've got acros that you've had for 6 months, as far as I'm concerned, you're doing well already.
That's a very good point. Actually, I'd not looked at that. So the second part,
you should just be happy.
Basing out in 6 months, that's a healthy sign. That's good. It's doing its thing. And the corals don't do what you want them to do. And I've got some corals that grow in the wrong direction. I've set them up so they will grow to the left, and they grow to the right. And I'm like, what are you doing? You're shading. So corals are, they don't listen to you. They do whatever they want. But that's a good thing. Basing out for 6 months, happy days. Leave it. Dan, question on Instagram. I see people using. Oh, we've done that one. Okay, thank you. Torches are bastards.
I agree. Moving on.
so does Fish Guy Connor. Let's move down. Question: what do you think about the Red Sea Reef LED 90 lights? Buy them, and then buy Radians, and then buy Kessels. It gives you a real rush. I had a Red Sea Reef LED 90, and I replaced it with the Reef Factory Reef Flare Pro, which I've now had for a long time. For me anyway, and I liked the Reef LED. It gave really nice shimmer. It was very much like Kessel, but I didn't like the color of it. Ryan, you've switched off at this point.
No. Well, firstly, I hate equipment talk. I got distracted by something. So while you're talking about the equipment, I thought I'd just let you go on. But I agree with you. I wasn't a fan of the color. Either they're just. No, it was the color I didn't like. They were too blue for me, for my liking.
They weren't blue enough for me. It's so funny. The Kessel, I've heard other people say, "Oh, Kessels are too blue," and I'm like, no, they're a bit too teal for me.
So 1 second.
I know exactly, but ultimately, are they good light? Yeah, absolutely they are. They give really nice shimmer. They're cool. They're good.
There you go. I'm really interested to see, because I had the GHL lights on now, but I'm interested to see what they look like with water. Because I don't know if I have shimmer. I'm assuming they do have shimmer, but I don't know, because you only get shimmer once water's in it.
Look at
it's
Reef
water
Bum's
that makes the shimmer.
Yeah, well, water movement as well. Look
Yeah.
at Reef Bum's tank, because he's got the same lights as you.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah, because I don't like shimmer, but I might get used to it.
Yeah, okay. You'll have some shimmer, I suspect.
Yeah.
Question, but actually, just one last thing on lights as well is that I don't think there is a best, like, in inverted commas, best lights. There are like Radion, Reef LED, Reef Factory, Kessel. They all do a very similar job. They just do it slightly differently. So there and some will be. There are pros and cons of all of them. Some might suit you more than others. I'm working my way through until I find the perfect light.
Sorry, I zoned out like literally probably 5 minutes ago.
All right, we'll talk about.
The reason I was laughing is because someone is messaging me and they're watching the stream and they're saying, "I can see when I'm distracting you," and then they just wrote, "I'm sorry, I'll stop distracting you."
Don't do that, because you're distracting mine. I don't like it. Stop it.
They just went. I saw you get in trouble.
Yeah,
I can't get in trouble.
Put your phone down, Ryan. We're trying to talk to the good people of the internet. Question: my Aquapora Aussie is turned brown. Yeah, since I received it in the mail, it's been 2.5 months. It still looks brown. Will it ever turn green again? It'll probably take a while. It's very common for aquariums to go brown when you first get them, especially if it was wild.
Also, especially if you have high phosphates and high nutrients.
High nutrients, yeah.
Because the brown is actually the zooxanthellae. So they're just so much zooxanthellae that's what causes them to turn brown. So when it's producing less zooxanthellae, you can then see the color of the coral.
Yeah.
So I believe that's correct. You're looking at me like it's not, but I'm pretty sure that's correct.
I was looking at the next question, if I'm honest.
Oh, he's got me distracted by the next question while I'm talking.
I know. Well, so there's last two questions on lights. First, John White says, "What's the obsession with lights when flow is more important? Is flowing more important?"
I'm not
saying it's not.
They're equal. They're all equal.
It's a common thing to say, and I've probably said it before as well. It's a popular thing to say. Oh yeah, but flow is more important than light, and I'm not saying it isn't, but it's like you can't have an awesome tank with crap light and amazing flow, and vice versa. So you need to get both ways. But flow absolutely is important. But the reason that people are obsessed with lights, people like me are obsessed with lights, is because that makes the most instant visible difference. If I change my power head, it's not the tank's going to look the same. Doesn't matter if I go from a 10 power head to a 1,000 power head. It's look the same. If I change my lights, instant difference.
The instant difference is to your wallet.
This is very true, and it doesn't mean that it will be an instant improvement, but you see the difference. That's why the obsession. And the final question I'm going to answer on lights is: did you see the BRS video regarding lighting and the data they got from it? And the answer to that is yes, I did.
I saw a little bit of it.
I watched it. I thought actually that so I love what BRS do, and I love all of their stuff basically, but I didn't learn anything new from that video.
Is that because you already know everything?
Yes, fact. I know everything there is to know. No, of course not. But it's because they were saying, look, lots of light above your tank is good.
Yeah.
Especially if you've got SPS. I don't know if they're talking. I can't remember. Yeah, no shit.
Yeah. Going back to the last question with the flow as well. Flow changes over a period of time. So as your corals grow, your flow changes. But what I will say, every single tank I've ever had, people obsess over flow, has had one MP40 on one side and one MP40 on the other, directly opposite each other in the middle, and nothing else other than the return. I've never had anything other than that. So that is pretty much all you need for most tanks. If you want if you've got a really weird aquascape or aquapora like yours, then yes, I understand. But I've never needed anything other than just two on either side. And the coral farm only has it on one side.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Reef Dude's Peninsula tank, he only has MP60s, I think, and maybe MP40s at one end of the tank.
Yeah,
I
same
have a Peninsula.
farm.
I have a Peninsula. I have them at either end. But they do look ugly. But it's better for the tank. But the Reef Dude's Peninsula tank is longer than mine.
Yeah.
And it looks wicked, even with flow at one end. So,
someone was at the coral farm yesterday, and they went, "You gotta tell Reef Dork about his wallpaper." I went, "Do you think he's not heard about his wallpaper?"
Yeah, I know.
Do you think I'm the first person to message him going, "Oh, I'm not sure if you thought about this"?
Yeah, you got a perfect person around your fish tank.
Pardon? Yeah, have you ever thought about changing your wallpaper?
Yeah. I was thinking about it today, actually. I was thinking about painting it, but anyway.
What I said was that is not the worst wallpaper that's in his house.
It's not. I got fox hunting wallpaper in my kitchen.
Yeah, true.
Angel's Reef. Any issues with storing a month's worth of calc, as in mixing it up and leaving it? So calcwasser in solution does lose potency over time. I stored mine until I got a calcwasser stirrer which is not necessary. It's good, but you don't need it, by the way.
Yeah.
I've had that question a lot lately. Do I need a calc-quasar stirrer? No, you don't. It's expensive. All the calc stirrer does really is save space. And if you've got 400 quid to save a bit of space, good on you. If you haven't, don't worry about it.
I think we're going to have to do like a speed round, because I just realized we've got 15 minutes left, and we've told people we're going to answer all of their questions.
All right, well, I'll do my best. So so I stored it for a month at a time, no problem. That's fine, but it can lose potency. I don't think it's an issue, but be aware of it. Hang on a second. Question: how do you guys get acros to grow?
We did that one.
Oh, we've done that one.
Yeah.
See, this is you asking people to post questions twice.
You're not very good at this, are you?
I'm terrible at it. Can you use calc and all three simultaneously? Yes, you can. I use calc and ATI Essentials Plus, but I dose them at different times wherever possible, because you don't want them precipitating out, going into the same bit. Paul, question. On Facebook and forums, a lot of people say nutrient levels do not matter and say an imbalance is the issue. Is this rubbish, and what does it mean? Oh, that's a difficult question to answer.
That is a long question to answer. Yeah. There is something called the Redfield ratio, but the Redfield ratio is based on something which is I think I'm not 100% sure. This was what Red Sea told me. It's based on something at the bottom of the ocean. Our reefs are not at the bottom of the ocean.
I thought it wasn't even. I thought it was a plant, not even a saltwater plant.
Maybe
whatever.
Yeah.
So, do nutrient levels matter? Yeah, but all I really care about nutrient levels, the imbalances for me, really, I want the balance to be right. So I want more nitrate than phosphate.
Yeah.
I love the idea of having the Redfield ratio perfect, but I can't. It's too difficult. I'm never going to do it, so I'm not bothered. The only thing I don't mind if my nutrients get quite high on that tank behind me and my water box, which is a really nice looking LPS tank at the moment. My nitrates are about 25. My phosphate is about 0.2. On the water box is even higher. That's fine. Yeah. I would like it to be a little bit lower, but I don't care. It's fine. The only thing I don't like about nutrients exactly is 0. Yeah. I panic when I get to 0 and I dose the stuff.
Yeah.
So there you go. Question: my acan has dropped a few heads, but new ones are growing in its place. The acan heads are big and fluffy. Could it be because the dead heads are shading each other out? I'd be surprised if acan heads are shading acan heads out.
Acans love food. They're one of the corals that if you feed them, they do well. And if you don't feed them, they don't do well sometimes. So acans are definitely one of those corals that if you want to improve the health of them, feeding them regularly will help.
Okay.
Which is opposite to what we said earlier.
Yeah. Trackies and LPS. Is a roller mat a bad idea? Will it remove their food? I have a roller mat on my LPS tank. And will it remove their food? Yeah, actually, but so will a skimmer, so will water changes. I don't think they're a bad idea at all.
Yeah,
but you don't want if you've got really low nitrate and phosphate, and you find that that's reducing it even further, then you don't want that. You want nutrients. So
yeah, basically, if you've got 0 nitrate, turn your skimmer off, because your skimmer is designed to lower your nitrate.
Or feed more.
Yeah.
There we go. Is my Bubble Magus Curve 7 skimming too much on my Reefer 350 as I keep bottoming out my nitrates? There you go.
There you go. Turn it off.
yeah. Or dose the stuff. But
dial it down as well.
People often when people turn off skimmers, they often turn it off overnight. And I always think, why not turn it off during the day? Because that's when you're going to have a higher pH. So don't turn it off at night, because then you'll can have even lower pH and a bigger.
Oh, no, I meant turn it off for a period of time.
Oh, I see, for months.
Not like for a few hours a day. Because all that's going to do is as soon as it turns back on, all the crud that's dried on is going to start flaking off probably.
Okay. AB.
I love it when you think I'm wrong and you go like this. Okay.
I'm not saying I think you're wrong. I'm saying I'm saying what I was thinking is that. I don't know if it would, but I don't agree. I don't disagree. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah. So we'll just agree to not disagree.
should we have an argument instead?
I think we should. I think we should have an argument. I
don't want an argument.
People will be back next week just to see us.
Have an argument.
We're gonna book a fight, aren't we? Like like other YouTubers.
Charity, YouTube match. Will Red Sea Reef Energy AB Plus affect nitrate and phosphate? I used it for quite a long time and I didn't notice it doing so.
It's not meant to.
No.
They specifically say in the advertising that it doesn't, I'm sure.
I didn't notice it doing so, and I used it for 6 months.
Yeah.
So, and you use it semi-regularly, don't you?
very, very semi-regularly. I use powdered food more. Sometimes I mix it with powdered food, so the powdered food absorbs it. I don't know if that's helping or not, but I give it a go sometimes.
Okay. Ryan, why don't you grow and sell anemones?
Because anemones are a pain in the ass, where they like to walk around. And I do actually have anemones, but they are stuck, and they're in a little basket, but they're stuck to the basket. So if someone tries to come and buy one, it's like I've got a choice. Either I cut the basket up and release all the anemones, or I try and like scrape it off. It's just not set up for anemones. I've got one that's literally been right next to my MP40 that escaped probably, I don't know, 4 months ago. And it's just like, hey, I'm going to get you one day, but today's not that day.
All right. What are your thoughts on natural seawater? I have a local fish shop that sells it and I use it on my Fluval 13.5.
I used it for years.
Okay.
As long as you take out the cigarette butts and the condoms, you're good to go.
Bloody hell, you get your water from Bognor Regis or something?
That was exactly where I was getting it from.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Yeah, I personally prefer to have control over it. I prefer to produce my own water, but
there's definitely a difference with the corals. If you get fresh, natural seawater, so this is from a shop, I don't know. If you get it directly out of the sea, warm it up and put it in your tank, the corals go mental from all the bits that they're eating. They love it. But again, you don't know what you're putting in.
No, yeah. Yeah.
I did it probably
I've never used
for
it,
4 years. 4 years I probably did it for, so I know it can work. But is it a good idea? And did I lose coral in those years? And did I know why I lost coral in those years? So it's hard to say.
Question: what's the best way to transfer a tank? Oh man, it's a pain in the ass. It's a real pain.
Basically, you want enough plastic boxes.
Yes.
To put as much water as you can in. You want them sealable with duct tape so the water doesn't get out when you're driving. It depends. Is your tank 50 liters or is it 2,000 liters?
I assumed he was moving it from one room to another or something.
Oh, or a new tank. It could be a new tank as well.
You need lots of heaters. I found when I've done it in the same room, I had a few vats of water, but I only had one heater.
Yeah.
And so suddenly you've got a difference in, and it set aside 10 times more time than you think. It's a pain in the ass.
Oh, literally I'm not joking. When I moved my 1,000-liter tank, I started, I think, at 4 in the morning or 5 in the morning, I think. And the next day at 3 in the morning, I went to bed.
Yeah.
That's how long it took.
Yeah, God. Okay. All right. Next question. When starting a 562-liter, very specific.
Yeah, it's very specific.
I bet it's not 562. I bet it's different. It can't be that. It can't be that precise. Do you mix the salt in the tank itself or mix it before putting it in the tank? When I've done it, I've filled my tank full of fresh water.
Yeah.
And then poured in salt mix.
That's what I'll do as well with this one.
Yeah. You'd need a lot of containers otherwise.
Yeah. It's just a lot of time consuming. You can have the power heads on, they'll mix up. Literally, if you do it in barrels, it's a lot longer process. Whereas
a good way with this, what I found before is that salt will settle at the bottom, especially if you've got sand.
Yeah.
And so you'll test your salinity and you won't get a true reading because it hasn't all dissolved. So leave it for a week if you can. Yeah. And then test again a week after, and then you'll be all right. And heat it as well. Put a heater in there. Chad Murphy, would you two be willing to accept photo submissions and parameters and do a show helping reefers by seeing other tanks and problems?
What, as a live stream, do you mean?
Yeah. So I'm not against the idea necessarily, but there are two things that jump out to me. First off, that would take a lot of organizing.
Yeah.
And I don't think I've got the time for it. But secondly, and this is one of the things, like people, the questions that we get asked quite often that we can't answer are, this is my tank, these are my parameters, what's the problem?
Yes.
Because it's not as simple as I can see your tank, therefore I know everything. What you want to say, where do you get your source water? What salt mix are you using? Do you test your salinity?
Yes.
What sand have you got? How long have your tank been running? What do you feed? A million questions.
Exactly.
And you can't just front load 10 questions and say, give me these 10 questions. You need to say, right, what are you feeding? You're feeding that food. Okay, now I know that information. I've got another 5 questions. And
that's why. So obviously I do the consultations, as you know, like just shameless plug.
Yeah,
so
good.
The reason I learned as I said, not to reply to people with regards to the message me is because if they message me saying my parameters are fine, I have to then go back. Well, seriously, what are your parameters? Are they are they in balance with each other? Or could it be something else? And if you've got a coral that's not doing well, what is your par? What are your parameters? Have you had any K8 swings? Have you got any fish which are annoying them, or even fish that might be annoying them? There's so many different possibilities that you need to really have a back and forward, which is why when I saw it, I was like, I'm not sure that will work, because just having your parameters doesn't tell us anything.
It's a tiny piece of the information you need. So
of a much bigger puzzle. Yeah.
I'm not against the idea, but the time it would take to organize that, and you just can't do it justice properly. I don't think.
Yeah.
Okay. You should do a video of people's aquariums pointing out the pros and cons about them, or like critically analyzing them. Well, we did that last week.
Yes, and actually, just to remind it, like last week I said, do you remember Mrs. Emotions? I said that she had a very nice tank, and I thought that the tank had crashed because it was closed down. That it hadn't crashed because she messaged me the next day, just very kindly, very nicely, just to let you know. A lot of people thought our tank crashed, but the reality is we're just changing it and we're setting it back up. So
it doesn't surprise me at all, because that a lot of time went into that tank. So in hindsight, it would have been surprising if it did crash. But okay, cool.
I'm just thought that people know because I said something wrong, so I wanted to correct myself.
There we go. Anton Tar, are you familiar with the major reclassification that happened with soft corals 6 months ago? I'm not.
Me either.
I don't really care about that sort of thing most of the time. There are times when it does matter, but there are times when it doesn't matter.
I think on a hobbyist level, which that's what you are. On a hobbyist level, generally it doesn't matter as long as you're not assuming that torches and frog spawns are all euphyllia can all touch each other. That's when it becomes an issue, when you're putting corals next to each other that are touching each other and they sting each other. But other than that, generally speaking, you don't.
That's it. I've got loads of aquaporas in my tank that I don't know what they are. I don't even know a common name, but I don't know if it's an aquapora hyacinthus or an aquapora millipora or an aquapora tenuis or whatever. I got no idea. I've got no clue. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. It also doesn't matter if it's a Pikachu or a Wolverine or a blueberry mushroom or whatever.
Martin Brown asks the question you've just answered. I have no problems with hammers and frog spawns, but torches seem fine for months and then slowly wither and die. Why are they so hard to keep? So I made a video about this that was I think it was like top 6 beginner corals that are actually difficult to keep, and torches were number 1, because they're often, and I actually checked this, I watched the BRS video when they recommended beginner corals, and torches was on there, and I was like, cool. So people do say they're easy, and they're not.
It's so I went to Kraken Corals a little while ago, and as soon as you walk in, they have a display tank, and when I was there anyway, at least it had the most beautiful like bronze and gold torches. So they had grown them. They weren't frags. They were like you've seen them there, and I went, like that's amazing what you've done. See how I'm impressed I'm impressed by things I know what's behind and how difficult they are to do. If I just saw a load of torch frags, I wouldn't care. But the fact that they had grown them, and they said, "Oh, by the way, just so you know, not that long ago, we lost half of them." So even them in their tank, which was amazing, it might not have been half of them; it could have been a third or whatever. Even them who've grown them and they've got this amazing reef tank, they have trouble with them as well. It's just one of those corals where you can do really well, and for years they're fine, or sometimes you can get them on day one and they just die. They don't like change. Yeah, you could literally scratch just like a tiny scratch, and that's enough to give them brown jelly. You could get that while getting them out of the bag or dipping them. So they're just too sensitive for me. I don't like torches.
James says, question, asking for a friend. If someone were to set up a Prestige Reef Dork Discord, would that be a problem? Do you know what Discord is?
Not really. Isn't that where people talk to you?
Yeah, basically. So there is actually a Reef Dork Discord. It's just I've set it up so there is an account,
Yeah.
I think you must have to be invited, because I've never checked it since I've set it up. But I've never used Discord. I don't know what it is properly. I know what it is and what it does, but I've never used. I don't know. Like TikTok, I know what TikTok is. I don't know how it works because I don't use it. It's not my cup of tea. YouTube is, so I do YouTube. So I like the idea of Discord, but it's another thing that will take time away from making Reef Dork videos. And do you want me to make a Reef Dork video every fortnight, or do you want me to run a Discord chat?
I don't. I love saying that. We should do a Prestige Reef Dork bingo. Someone needs to create we can't do it because obviously we can then do it, but maybe Les can do it or something, like a little chart of all the things. Like, so for example, if I'm drinking wine, that's one thing. So usually I drink wine during these, don't I? Or if I say I don't watch your channel, then they can go through and tick them off. I can't remember where this was going, but I think you said that's because you said would I rather have a Discord or watch your videos, and I thought neither, because I don't care.
Because you don't want to. Fair enough. Question is, why is there not a controller that has anything for nitrate and phosphate? You guys should talk to the bigwigs. First off, that second part is funny to me. The idea that you and I have any influence over manufacturers.
No, or each other or anyone else.
So we I'm sure we influence people in the hobby, but I don't think what we say gets paid attention to. Maybe it does, I don't know, but by manufacturers. But anyway, why is there not a controller? Well, there are automatic testers that do nitrate and phosphate.
Yes.
But I wouldn't want to hand the keys over to something that controls nitrate and phosphate. I'd be up for it in 20 years' time when 1 million people have used it and it's been
destroyed their tanks first.
Yeah, exactly. And then they've got through that, and the second generation. Yeah. But a controller, you could, in theory, you could do it, but it would be too complicated. And I don't like the idea.
The only one that's not been done at all is phosphate from and I know you can check them with the Reef bot.
Yeah.
But
Mastertronic.
The Ion Director does it without reagents, but that's not out yet. So
it is.
So if you think about it, if you can think of this, or the person who asked, or me and you can think of this, do you think that the companies that have got the technology have not gone, you know what? We should build one of these because people will buy them because they buy the alkalinity ones. So if it's possible, some of them, I think phosphate is more difficult. People are working on it.
Yeah,
but it comes down to sometimes that there was no KH technology originally. There was no technology, and then someone invented it, and then now it's a thing. Yeah,
Reef Factory are working on a nitrate tester and a phosphate tester.
Yeah,
it's a single device that can test one parameter, but they've put it back. I've got no inside information. I speak to them from time to time, but I've got no inside. They don't tell me anything, unfortunately. But they pushed the release date back a couple of times, a few times, I think. And I can only assume, and again, I don't know anything, but I can only assume it's because they found that something about it needs improving or whatever. So I think it's difficult to get right, and you can't just go, boom, let's do it.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're getting to the end of 2 hours. So hang on a second. The Reef Flare has to be my favorite light. My trickle of the leader is now partly lilac brown and deep purple. I really like the Reef Flare as well, but it's not that it's better than any other light. Someone else earlier asked what's the best light. It's not that it's better than anyone. It's different.
Yeah. I don't know what the Reef Flare is. Who make it?
Reef Factory.
Oh, okay.
But it's different. But it is good. And what else have we got going on? Have either of you had any experience with macroalgae tanks? No, I really don't like.
I assume they're probably not that difficult.
Algae.
I assume I could be completely wrong, but there's plenty of weird algae that come in and grow sometimes. As long as you haven't got tangs eating them, you should be fine.
Mm. Yeah,
that could be totally wrong. It could be really difficult.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think it is probably easy, but I just don't like. That doesn't appeal to me at all. I think they're just not my cup of tea. It's like massive tanks. I don't like massive tanks. You don't like tiny tanks. Well, you don't like small. You don't like any small tanks. When everyone Reef Dork Alex, when everyone talks about their tank capacity, do they say without rock and sand? I think everyone probably gives a different answer.
Yeah, I said you should ask everyone.
So the reality, so when I talk about this tank, I that holds about 40-ish, 45 liters maybe of water. On paper, it's a 53-liter tank, but actually the reality is more like 40, I think.
Yeah.
And that's after displacement. That is measured. I've measured that when I filled it. So that's what I say when I'm talking about that tank. But sometimes I also refer to it as a 13.5 gallon tank because that's the name, and sometimes it's easier in certain contexts. So
Yeah,
it's very inconsistent. People will give you a different answer all the time, I suspect.
I think you were getting most. I've had a quick look down. There's not that many questions left. I reckon we can knock, if you want, we can knock through them quickly. But I think there's only like 3 left.
Okay, well so I'll read the last questions that I can see in that case, because we will wrap up, because we'll wrap up. Question for a first-time reef builder newbie: would you go for the fully built kits like Aqua One, or get some? Would you get a tank with all the equipment? The Aqua One equipment is a bit. I've had one of those tanks. I didn't buy the equipment, but it was a bit rubbish. The skimmer is enormous and it's quite loud from the reviews I read, and it's probably fine, but. And the one good thing about that is when you buy a tank like that, it's got everything. So you don't need to think, do I need a skimmer?
Yeah, yeah. Is it the right size?
Exactly. Yeah. So,
but the negative is that you don't get to choose what you have,
and you'll end up upgrading all of it.
And it will I think they usually cost more when you buy them all in one than one all-in-one tank usually costs more than.
There aren't many tanks that come with all the equipment. To be fair,
that's true.
The pros and cons. If I was doing it, I'd never do that. But that's because I know what equipment I want and all that sort of thing.
Cool. Bubbly Reefer needs to get banned. She just said everyone add more questions now. As if the keeper's here.
I don't think there's a right or wrong answer, to be honest. No. Right, last question.
There you go.
Your idea of using 2 TMC nanoreactors for RFOS. Oh, it's an idea. It's just a comment. It's not a question.
Yeah.
All right. Well, in which case, we'll wrap it up. Ryan, thank you very much for coming. Everybody, thank you for your questions and for joining. We'll catch you next week.
Right. Thank you very much.
Bye, guys.
Bye.